Welcome to stage 16 of the Tour de France. Matthew Keenan with you on a day where we head to Gap on a course that is more famous for its treacherous final descent than its climbing. And with tomorrow being a rest day, we can expect an aggressive stage today. Stage 16 starting in Bourg de Péage. It is a long stage making its way through De Gap, 201 kilometres. There's two Category 2 climbs and then that final descent through the finish line, which has claimed some victims in the past. Most of the stage is gradually going uphill. It's by no means an easy day in the saddle. Once again, warm conditions in the start town, which basically translates as toll booth town. As they head through to Gap, a town that has been a regular host of stage finishes, particularly over the past 15 years. And with 123 kilometres remaining, this is the situation on the road. There are two groups well ahead of the peloton. This is the leading group of 12 riders. They're at 6 minutes and 3 seconds ahead of the peloton containing the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. In this group, once again, Peter Sagan. The man in the green jersey, he's also wearing the red number as the most combative rider on yesterday's stage. There is a second group on the road containing 12 riders as well, and they're at 1 minute and 19 seconds behind. Good to see the Luxembourg national champion in this move, Bob Jungels. He's just calling for a drink. And this is the group of the chasers. Two riders from MTM Quebec, Daniel Tekla-Hammernots and Edvald Bosenhagen in this chasing group for MTM Quebec. edX Quickstep also with two riders in this group, Michael Golash and Matteo Trentin. Thomas Voeckler, he's here for the Europcar team, as he so often is on stages like this. Iverti is the rider in this group for Movistar. Pierre-Luc Perichon just going through your picture in the black and green colours. This is Adam Hansen in his 12th Grand Tour in the red colours of the Lotto Soudal squad. There he is at the back of the group. And it has been an extraordinarily fast start to the stage. Throughout the first hour, they covered 53.6 kilometres. Admittedly, it has been a tailwind, but the terrain has predominantly been uphill. They started the stage at an altitude of 157 metres above sea level. They're now at 300 metres above sea level. So that curtails the tailwind just a little bit. So either way you look at it, even if it was flat with a tailwind, that's fast. This is Pantano from the IM cycling team. Mate from Cofidis. This is Hansen from Lotto Soudal. And haven't they had a successful race? 3 stage wins with Andre Greipel. 3 stage wins for edX Quickstep as well, with 3 different riders. This is Golash this time, who's in the move. Bosenhagen, the Norwegian national champion. What an occasion it has been for MTM Quebec. Irazar is the rider from Trek Factory Racing, one of the many men in the race from the Basque Country. And they're working well together, but they're still at 1 minute and 12 seconds behind. That was Matteo Trentin making his way through. He was also in the break yesterday, and he was the one that tried to split things up towards the end and just hope maybe they could defy the sprinters. 31 degrees at the start, 31 degrees at the finish. Barely a cloud in the sky here at the finish line in Gap. Lovely conditions for the spectators. Hot conditions again for the riders. And you can see the average speed for the first hour of racing, which I made reference to before. 53.6 kilometres per hour. That is smoking. They really have been moving this morning. It is the rest day tomorrow, of course, and I said this morning, but it's very much the afternoon. The stage getting underway a little after midday in the glorious sunshine, as we saw the weather report as well, 31 degrees. Intrigued to look down upon the peloton and try and work out exactly who is it doing the chasing. As we look at the remnants of a chateau that was built around about the year 1200 and controlled access to the upper Drôme Valley. Partially destroyed in the 16th century, the empty shell of this keep, surrounded by the 2 walls, is maintained as best as they possibly can. This is Mikel Giral towards the back, number 14 for the AG2R Le Mondial squad. Astana now on the front doing the chasing, but they do have a rider sitting in the front group. Andrei Grivko, their Ukrainian, who's a strong time trialist, he's in the front group for Astana. Yet I get the impression that they're hoping that Vincenzo Nibali can win the stage today. Mark Renshaw delivering the drinks for edX Quickstep, who are also helping with some chasing. This is Gruzdev now at the front for the Astana squad. And the entire edX Quickstep team is here towards the front, but they've got two riders in the second group on the road. And those two riders are Mikael Golas and Matteo Trentin. They sit at 1 minute and 16 seconds behind the front group of 12. Here we go to the leaders. Peter Sagan, he's 4 kilometres away from another intermediate sprint and gaining 20 more points in the race for green. Simon Geschke in the black colours, the bearded one, who was in the break yesterday. For Katusha, they've got a man in the move today. They missed out yesterday and had to do a lot of the chasing. This time through, they've got the Austrian national champion, Marco Haller, in the break. Christophe Riblon has made the move for AG2R Le Mondial, a dual stage winner in the Tour de France. He's won in the Pyrenees and he's won in the Alps. De Gens gives himself a break from doing chasing by getting in the move. Serge Pals sitting in second last position in this group in the colours of MTM Quebecer, number 218. Understandably, Serge is not contributing to the pacemaking of this group, because in the second group on the road, he's got two of his teammates, Edvald Bosenhagen and Daniel Tekla-Hammernots, and if these two groups came together, Edvald Bosenhagen would be a big chance to win. And Norwegians have won here in Gap in the past. Back in 2011, it was Tor Hushovd who won the stage. Ivetti for the Movistar team. Alejandro Valverde from that team has said there'll be fireworks today. There were fireworks the last time we came here. That was in 2013. And Alberto Contador tried to attack on the descents and he crashed. He didn't crash severely, unlike what we saw with Yeshiba Bolocki back in 2003, but he did crash, and Chris Froome kind of came unstuck. It wasn't a full-blooded crash for Chris Froome, but he certainly did get the foot out and had a slight touchdown. He was uninjured, which was the good part of it. There's Louis Vestre now on the front for Astana. Fourth on the stage yesterday, Peter Sagan. There he is in the green jersey. We've completed 15 stages so far, and Peter Sagan has finished in the top 5 in 10 of those stages. He's just making sure that he's going to be in a position to be able to win this intermediate sprints. Peric Fedrigo is the rider that just moved up to take his wheel. The experienced Frenchman. He was very disappointed a few days ago when he didn't get awarded the most combative prize. And I understand his disappointment. He said he took it as a sign of disrespect. He was the rider that started the breakaway, and he was the last one from the two-man breakaway to be caught. Yet the judges awarded Kenneth Van Bilsen from Cofidis, a Belgian rider, as the most combative on the stage. The spine of Peter Sagan is slightly twisted as he then also turns the head to see if anybody is going to dare to challenge him from behind. But he wants to collect these 20 points without spending any unnecessary energy. He will collect. So Peter Sagan now will extend his lead in the race for the green jersey out to 64 points. As we've mentioned the last few days, the Tinkoff Saxo team have said that these are the days through the transitional days in the Massive Central where Peter Sagan can lock up this green jersey classification. But with the big stage win yesterday by Andre Greipel, the race is anything but done. There's also been a clear shift at Tinkoff Saxo as to where they're spending all their resources, and a loss of confidence in the ability of Alberto Contador to be able to win the race, which is perfectly understandable, given that Alberto Contador has got 4 minutes and 23 seconds to try and make up. And every time the road has gone uphill, he hasn't looked as if he's been able to even hold on to Chris Froome, let alone attack him. This is the chasing group of 12. It is Pantano who is at the front. And nice to see Jalison Pantano off the front today as he's celebrating Colombia Independence Day, when Colombia got its independence from Spain on the 20th of July back in 1810. The main Colombian that the Colombians themselves will be paying attention to today is Nairo Quintana. And the main peloton, they're 3 kilometres behind on the road. It is a long way down. That's on the second group, so they're almost 4 kilometres behind the lead group. A gap of 5 minutes and 39 seconds. The speed is still desperately high. 2 climbs on today's stage, both of them Category 2 climbs. But as I mentioned earlier on, it's the final descent today that is more famous than the actual climb itself. There was a horrible crash here in 2003. That was with Joseba Bolocchi, the Spanish climber, who had formerly finished on the podium at the Tour de France. There was also a crash on the descent with Alberto Contador in 2013. And then Contador got back to the lead group, which contained Chris Froome, all the other big favourites for the general classification, as we see confirmation of Peter Sagan collecting the 20 points. And then Alberto Contador came past Nairo Quintana and accused him of taking advantage of Alberto's misfortune, when it really wasn't Alberto Contador's misfortune. It was a mistake on his behalf. He tried to attack on the way down. This, by contrast, is misfortune. There's a rear wheel puncher for Richie Porte. And a little bit of yoga whilst he's at it. Richie trying to stay limber and relaxed. No doubt looking forward to tomorrow's rest day. He'll be required with the following few stages as we head into the Alps. Team Sky have most certainly been in the news over the last few days, and not just for the performances of Chris Froome, but as much as anything else, the reaction to the performances of Chris Froome. Briefly back to the story about the crash on this descent back in 2013. Contador wasn't happy with Nairo Quintana, so he remonstrated with him on the road, and it was caught on camera. Alejandro Valverde was in the group and he also saw it, a teammate of Nairo Quintana. And he takes a big brother sort of a role with Nairo Quintana, Alejandro Valverde. He then went, after the stage, directly to Alberto Contador at Contador's team bus and said, if you've got a problem with Nairo Quintana, you've got a problem with me. Let's deal with it in private as opposed to in front of the cameras. Nairo Quintana knows that he's got a good ally in his experienced teammate and team captain, Alejandro Valverde. Even though it's Nairo Quintana who is the team leader, it is Valverde who is the captain. This is Julien Vermont at the front for edX Quickstep. Yesterday we saw Peter Sagan change his bike. He went across from the tarmac to the Venge for the sprint finish yesterday of the specialised bike options. And as he did that, one of the motorbikes carrying the cameraman came very close to him. Peter Sagan said it actually interrupted and slowed down the bike change. And then the team mechanic threw a bidon, a water bottle, at the cameraman and the motorbike. It was a pretty good throw. You wouldn't want to challenge him for a quick single in cricket if he was playing the game. But as a result of that throwing of the bidon, the sports director who was driving the car at the time, Sean Yates, has been excluded from the tour for today. And for today only. This towel that we're now getting a chance to look at dates back to the 19th century. 218 Serge Pales. What an occasion it must have been on Mandela Day when Steve Cummins won the stage for that squad. Still doing the right thing by the team, Serge. He's not contributing to the pacemaking. He wants to give that second group every chance to come across, and come across without Edvald Bosenhagen in particular spending too much energy. And Danny Navarro is in the front group for Cofidis, as Luis Angel Mate is in this second group on the road for Cofidis. Lotto Soudal with Adam Hansen in this group, Thomas de Gent in the front group. They're about to join forces. It's sure to be a thrilling end to the stage, because with so many teams with more than one rider in the group, once it all comes together and we get 24 riders at the front, that know that they're not going to be able to beat Peter Sagan or Edvald Bosenhagen in a sprint. That last climb is going to be super aggressive, as they're going to need a reasonable gap on Peter Sagan to stay away from him on the descent. Patrick Frederigo at the front for Breton Séché. He's about to be joined by a teammate with Pierre-Luc Perichon once again in the break. Emerging of the two échappés. The escapes coming forward, and a lunatic on the left-hand side of the road. It was probably best I didn't even acknowledge to give him the attention. Not sure if you were watching the Giro d'Italia this year, and I think it might have been stage 2 from memory. A spectator was on a bike and tried to jump into the peloton and caused a very large crash. Pure stupidity. Bob Jungels rolling off the front. Now this group just need to get themselves reorganised. They're not going to lose too much time though, I can't imagine, as the teammates will have a brief chat to each other, start to hatch the plan. This is Mate from the Cofidis squad as they enter the feed zone. Well, we have seen some ordinary crowd behaviour so far this year, but it's not the first time it's happened. Famously, Eddie Merckx back in 1975 was punched in the stomach in one of the mountain stages, and one of the most bizarre and most frightening incidents that we've ever seen was in the 2009 Tour de France, when the Kiwi Julian Dean, who now works as a sports director for Orica Green Edge, Julian Dean and Oscar Freire, the former world champion, was shot with air guns. They had massive wallets on their backsides as a result.
Gap now up to its highest point at 11 minutes and 32 seconds with 76 kilometres to go. I think it's one of those days when the riders have had a number of very, very difficult early starts. Yesterday the race was run off at extremely high speed as the riders came away from Mende on the way to Valence with average speed of 45, 46 kilometres an hour over the first hour of the race. Today, exactly the same thing with an average speed of close to 54 kilometres an hour. And yes, if you like professional cycling, there's some very interesting cycling art, and we saw it a couple of days ago, and it's been reproduced right down there in the middle of that field. 76 kilometres to go. 11:43. Here's Adam Hansen. To think Adam Hansen might be taking an option on the victory. You know, he's a rider who just seems to be a rider who never slows down. It's like having a massive big diesel engine. And if Adam Hansen gets himself 15 or 20 seconds advantage as we get down to the end of this race, Phil, they'll have a hard time catching him.
Well, just looking at the nationality of all these teams in the breakaway, I know that our Dutch colleagues on Dutch television are absolutely fuming. There's not a Dutch cyclist in the race, and they've got more than most riders in the race, has put anybody in this breakaway. And it's a big breakaway of 23 riders. Peloton looks as though they're just going to allow it to hold here. We're on the climb of the Col de Cap, at least the leaders are, and the peloton is, these are the leaders now, 5 kilometres to go, and the climb length being 9 kilometres. The main field is yet to get onto this climb.
Yeah, Dutch are starting with 20 riders at the start of the Tour de France this year, the second highest represented nation after France, who started with 41. So yes, they are a little bit disappointed to see a 23-man breakaway getting clear and none of their riders present. But let's not forget, they've got a rider in the top 10 in the, well, two riders in the top 10 in the overall standings. Robert Hessink lies 7th at 6:23 and Bauke Mollema at 10th, 8:53 back. So it's difficult to go for all kinds of things in the Tour de France. You've got to pick and choose your goals.
It is, and that's a very good result for Serge Powell. Still no worry in the amongst the Sky team. They're happy to eclipse the peloton as they ride on the front, doing all they have to do. They don't expect to be attacked at this part of the race because 70 kilometers is a long way to go, but they'll try as the leaders are on the way down. Thomas de Gent was over there in the places, and Boysenhagen as well, but the winner Serge Pauwels. Oh, Peter Sagan now is going to show them all how to really descend a mountain. Former ex-mountain biker.
Well, everybody knows
everybody
knows the acrobatic ability of Peter Sagan, Phil, going around these corners. Almost 70 kilometers. I think he was just trying to read the number plate on the back of the car there.
I'll tell you what, he really laid into that corner. Yeah. He's descending at around about 38 to 40 miles an hour at the moment, 62 kilometers.
And if you think that's a rather weird looking position he's getting himself into there, Phil, it's very much like the ski tuck position. You get down and make your body as aerodynamic as possible. And he's actually trying to push himself up to the slipstream of the motorbike. It's the motorbike's responsibility to get out of the way. But sometimes on these corners, a push bike can actually go around the corners much quicker than the motorbike.
Absolutely right, and the peloton themselves continue on the ascent as well. They've still got to go over the top. He wants it.
Yep, looking over his shoulder saying, OK guys, as we get a chance here to look at the live speed of Peter Sagan, almost 60 kilometers an hour, and he's not even pedaling currently. He goes round these corners. He is a magnificent bike handler. Talking to a lot of the guys on the circuit now, they say, well, you might have seen some good bike handlers in your time, but he said there are very, very few who can handle Peter Sagan. He's one of the few guys that, well, I know, who in professional cycling on the road, who actually can pull a wheelie going downhill. He really is incredible. Fantastic to see. So Sagan, that little bit of a cheeky hand signal there was to the other guys. Come on, guys, let's all work together here. But I don't think anybody can keep up with him just for the moment. And a bit further down, this is Micah. He's the rider who had that little bit of a mechanical or a little accident just a while back, but he's now riding himself back into contact with the main field. So there we go. Just get onto the back group. There's Kwiatkowski on the left-hand side in the white jersey, the world champion. He was very aggressive on yesterday's stage, even despite getting caught having another last-minute attack. And this little descent here, I think Peter Sagan is enjoying himself. This is Perichon, and he just lost a few lengths going around that corner. It's a very good descent here. We're dropping away now from the first climb of the day, the Col de Cabre. The Col de Mons is about 50 kilometers away, so they've got about 35 kilometers to ride on what is very difficult terrain. It's undulating, lots of corners, and starts to slightly ride up to the foot of the climb. Then we drop down into the outskirts of Gap, and the riders at one stage are not very much more than about 3 kilometers away from the finish line. Then they'll take a left-hand turn and climb up this massive climb, a 9-kilometer climb itself of the Col de Mons, and then plunge straight back down and come out onto the main road here about 3 kilometers away from the finish. The French have an expression called pédaler dans le beurre, which means you're pedaling in butter, and it looks very much as if that bloke was there, because that looks quite easy, his pedaling style, and he's not going anywhere.
Well, he should be, but he needs to pedal a bit quicker. 13 minutes 10, we're still going up here. Well, when we get to the next climb of the Col de Mons, it's a climb of 9 kilometers, and it's pretty steep. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult. There we are, Jens. Now, Jens, why didn't you retire and start doing that?
Well, I guess trying to break the rhythm up here. They were probably thinking, okay, this group is way too big to make it work, and every rider, even though they are going together in the same group, but everybody has his own plan, and probably some riders think, no, we got to arrive with a smaller group towards the last climb, and they try to test the legs of the others. It's a long way to go still for them, but they decided to start early to test the others.
Yeah, but funny thing is, Jensi, although we were looking at to me it was the response by Andrei Grivko, but the man who actually made it the first move there was Peter Sagan himself. And Peter Sagan, for me, Sagan really is in a very difficult situation because he's the only rider from his team. He doesn't have any help in this group, and he's the one who seems to be the one to want to split the group up.
That is true on a descent, yes, but I think we see him here at the back of the group. I think he was just pointing out he wants to talk to his team car, maybe get some new tactical instructions, maybe looking for getting another water bottle. He still has 2 bottles on his bike, so maybe just wants to talk to his director to develop a plan of how they want to try to win that stage today.
Yeah, but we know that he's a great sprinter, but he's also a good man when it comes to going downhill. And we saw at the top of the climb up to the summit of the Col du Monde, they really hardly got rid of him on a very difficult hilltop finish. Now, I've got a funny feeling today, if they don't get rid of him by more than about a minute and a half, they're not going to get rid of him. He seems to be changing his radio a lot during the course of the day, so he obviously feels that this is a great chance to get himself the victory. He hasn't won a stage in the Tour since 2013.
Yeah, and that's what he would love to say. As we said earlier, if you win the green jersey for the sprinters, you like to win at least one stage of the race at the same time.
Well, he really is spending... Oh, there's a call here for Team Sky. That's over Race Radio, just having a look to see what the problem is. Oh, there's a little problem at the right there as well, and that was for AG2R. So we're over the technical part of the descent now. The road will widen out a fraction, up and down. Nothing really too much to worry about now until the riders get to around about 175 kilometers into the race. And at that point, then they will be starting to line themselves up in the small town of Marcellon, or the Fraisinous, and that's when they will drop down into the outskirts of Gap, and they really aren't very far away. Now, Bardet has his hand up. Romain Bardet is the rider who put his hand up there, so he also has got a mechanical problem just a little bit further in front of Villermoz. He could be a rider with a chance to do something this afternoon. He likes that explosive little climb down towards the end, but the problem is this is not a hilltop finish as his victory was some time ago in the first week of the Tour de France. He's now got to think about the fact that you've got that long descent, and it's quite a long way from the top of the Col du Mons. It's 12 kilometers to go to the finish. And again, having made the technical part of the descent, a truce has been called in the main field as we look at this. Is a big gap. I think it's the biggest gap we've had since the start of the Tour de France. 13:36 between the leading group of 23 riders and the main field. So I think now we've come to the point with 50 kilometers to go where everybody's going back, taking on board drinks, and they're all getting ready to the final phase, because even though they know that they're not going to be able to get themselves the stage victory in that group behind it, they realize that it's a very important stage for trying to pull back time. But now there's a little bit of a split here, and Edvald Boasson-Hagen has seen this as an opportunity, joined there by Marco Haller. He's a rider in the white jersey. He's the champion of Austria. They've seen this as a chance to maybe slip away from Peter Sagan. Now, Peter Sagan, will, as I've said earlier, he's completely isolated. But look at this. Forget about that. He's going to take responsibility himself. Well, you know, it's going to be difficult, Phil, for Peter Sagan, because he is isolated in this group, and every time there's a move, it's up to him, and they all know that he's the fastest rider in the group, so he won't have too many mates.
Well, I think this is a prime move, and it's the only way, Paul, because Sagan is a fighter. He knows they're all going to attack him.
And it looks like Adam Hansen coming along, and that's not surprising, because I was just saying a few moments ago that Thomas de Gendt had done an awful lot of work in this group trying to favour the possibility of Adam Hansen getting into the split once it happens.
Well, Boasson-Hagen, his tail is up here. The tail of his new team, MTN Quebec, is riding high, because they actually won the team prize yesterday, which was hot on the heels of their stage win at Monde with Stephen Cummings. And before that, 4 days in the polka dot jersey for Daniel Tekla-Hymenot, who is in this front move at the moment. Now they want another stage win. Boasson-Hagen looks over to see if his attack has done any damage. A reaction from Peter Sagan, trying to bring the whole pack across, or just one rider maybe. Well, the gap is going out to a quarter now. As far as the day's win is concerned, we can forget the winner. It's right here in this front group. But now they are anxious about the size of the group, and they're trying desperately to break it down.
Well, they're all very, very concerned about the presence of Peter Sagan. I think they should be, because you saw with what ease Peter Sagan closed all of that down as soon as the attacks started to come thick and fast. The big move first came from Edvald Boasson-Hagen. He likes a breakaway like this, but he won't like the number of riders who are in there. And Thomas de Gendt, well, as soon as he saw the group come back together, he's starting to keep this group organised, because I think he probably agrees with me that it's too far from the finish for the breakaway to go clear. There are too many riders in this group at 23, so there's always somebody who's got a little bit of energy to close it down. And going like a train right now.
He is, and it must have been one of the most picturesque lines down here as well. Well, Hansen's working away. He's been the former time trial champion of his country. He's a Queenslander, which is a hot part of Australia, so today, as far as the weather's concerned, won't present him with a problem. He's ridden 11 Grand Tours. I think the record sits at 13. He's finished every one as well, Paul. I mean, when he had that crash in the first week, we thought, oh no, he's not going to make it. And here he is, still making it.
Still making it, and still making it look very easy as well, as we see his average speed creeping up there to almost 50 kilometers an hour. That's 31 miles an hour. These guys in the chasing group behind, they're going to have to really get themselves organized, because once he starts to move forward, well, it'll be difficult to pull back. Jensi, I think that Adam Hansen is probably the worst rider that breakaway group could have let go clear off the front, because you know, as I do, how powerful he is and how hard he is to catch.
Yep, definitely he is a good guy to be out there. Plus, he's backed up by his teammates, so the guys chasing him, they know the second they get on Adam Hansen's wheel, they're going to get punished by an attack from Thomas de Gendt. So he's in a pretty good position, and if they hesitate a moment too long, he pulls it off. He's a pretty good climber as well. He knows how to handle his bike on descents. So yeah, if he arrives on the bottom of the climb with a minute, it looks very likely that he might have a more than a good chance to actually pull it off and win a stage again for himself.
Well, he's certainly settling in now. He got away 46 kilometres out. He's been in the lead for 5 kilometres. He started to build a lead. Our computer's saying he's got about 31 seconds over the chase behind, which is not really a chase just now. I think they might gamble and see if they can hit him when the roads get a little bit more difficult, and that's not far away.
Now it looks as if these two riders are about to join their force, and you see how Adam Hansen just keeps taking on board food, just keeps the energy levels topped up. I think he needs to sit back and wait.
7.
So now we're looking at a situation where we have two leaders, the gap over the chasing riders, and there's Nibali.
Well, we switch to the back of the field here. This is Vincenzo Nibali, last year's dominant winner of the Tour de France, but he's 8 minutes and 17 seconds back at the moment. And that also, in the pack, he's 16 minutes and 23 seconds back of the two leaders.
Well, I think we'll just have to put a cross on Vincenzo Nibali's 2015 campaign, but let's not forget, Phil, this is a guy who's won the Grand Tours before. He's won all 3 Grand Tours, and I think he'll come back and fight next year, but this year just somehow things did not seem to go right. The two riders are going to combine their forces. Now that, I think, will be good for Adam Hansen. He's now been joined by Marco Haller, and that slightly different coloured jersey there is an indication that he's the national Austrian road racing champion. And he was in that very, very nasty crash at the start. He, in fact, sort of went over the top of the crash and landed on his feet in the grass verge over to the right-hand side. And that was the crash that took out eventually Fabian Cancellara.
Well, Haller's the first time in the Tour de France. He's well over 2 hours behind at the race leader. So too is Adam Hansen. Two perfect candidates for the stage victory. But everybody in this front group wants a day of winning in the Tour de France. And for that reason, they will have to work very hard to open up a gap. It still leads a group of 21 riders to chase them down.
Yeah, they would have to have a comfortable advantage of a good 1 minute's lead once they start the climb, because as I keep mentioning, this climber, the Col de Mans, climbs up to 1,300 meters in altitude, and that's you know, just getting up there to 4.5 to 4,600 feet. So it's a pretty tough climb, and it's a climb of around 9 kilometres at 5.5. Jensi, I'm just thinking that now that other rider's come up there, that's actually going to be pretty good for Adam Hansen, because there's still a long way to go at 35 kilometres.
Yeah, because it simply shares the workload for him. It cuts the workload for him in half. They can share their turns on the front, so it's less work for Adam. And the way I see it, Adam is a much better climber and probably a better descender as well. So Adam can use him to help him to go to that climb, and then it's an open game of who of them two is going to be the best climber and trying to make it to the top as quick as possible. But yep, that definitely increases the chances for Adam Hansen to stay out there, definitely by a lot.
Yeah, but the other thing that you mentioned there about the descent, this race has always really been decided on the descent as we look at the magnificent mountain here of La Seuse. And Adam Hansen, another of those guys who's come into the sport from mountain biking. He is a great handler.
Well, maybe or hopefully he doesn't need to jump across the grass, and he can stay on the roads where how it's supposed to be. And if you hit that last corner back into the valley, it's not far to go from that last corner into the finish line, so there's not much chances to repair a mistake you did on the uphill or a mistake you did on a descent. Once you dropped off the wheel, it is pretty much impossible to come back in the remaining few kilometers, or like little more than 1 mile to the finish line. So you got to be on the wheel if you want to win the sprint, if you want to win the stage. If not, it's a very little chance you're ever going to come back.
Yes, just looking down at the Seuse mountain here, it peaks out at 2,000 meters. Again, most magnificent backdrop. The relief of this climb, it looks as if it's at the edge of a horseshoe. Looking back down the main field. Look at this time gap though, 16.5 minutes back to the main field, 34 kilometers to go. But you can see now as we get closer to the approach for the next strategic point of the Tour de France, and that of course is the Col de Mons, all of the teams of the overall contenders moving to the front end of the peloton. Sky for Chris Froome, Movistar for Quintana, and BMC looking after TJ Van Garderen. Even though they're 16.75 minutes behind in the race on today's stage, Phil, the leaders have to take this final climb and descent of the day very, very seriously.
Paul, if they continue with this sort of a time gap, MTN Quebec tonight will lead the team race.
That would be amazing to see that happen. They probably never even thought about that at the start of the Tour. They'd hoped to get a little bit of something out of the first week of the Tour, and they probably could have walked home with the lead in the King of the Mountains jersey for Daniel Tekla-Hymenot. That would be job done, contract fulfilled. Then they got a stage victory with Steve Cummings, which was even icing on the cake. But if they were to lead the team classification,
well,
wow.
They started the day 52 minutes behind Movistar. They're currently gaining 3 times 19 minutes.
That's pretty impressive.
So that gives them a lead of a couple of minutes or more over the peloton. We'll see if they can control it. Normally, of course, that gap will come down, but if it doesn't, they'll be smiling tonight for another reason, because they've had such a great tour. 18 minutes 52 and still going up. 21.9 kilometers to go to the finish. This is the chase group, remember now. 65 seconds to the front 2 riders. Obviously the snow comes here pretty shortly because there's no vegetation at the top of these major mountains around here.
I just had a quick glance at the average speed there, Phil. Adam Hansen on the descent down there into the outskirts of Gap was actually touching 75 kilometers an hour, which is just tickling 50 miles an hour downhill.
Well, just watching Adam Hansen here leading the charge at the break itself, of course. Hansen is the man who crashed heavily on stage 2, and we were all feared there, and he was on wet roads as well, that this was the end of Adam Hansen. But no, he waited a little while. He insisted he was going to get back on his bike, and then he tweeted that night about how he's used to living with pain and he'll just have to suffer. And now here he is in a chance of winning the stage.
Well, that's the amazing thing, Phil. When he was holding his shoulder just after that crash, it looked, as very often does, as if he'd injured his collarbone. We found out later that he had, but he hadn't broken the collarbone, but it is stuck together almost with surgical tape, and he had to just hold it in pace to try and lessen the pain. They are now on the leading 2 riders. They've started the climb, and that's going to line up for them to be 9 kilometers in length.
And the peloton still 19 minutes back of those 2 leaders on the climb. And I'm just wondering now whether that breakaway, they're going to have to make an early decision. It's a long climb, it's 8.9 kilometers, but there's so many climbers in that chase group, they know they're going to have to start breaking that group up. They can't leave it till the top now. Team Sky still got control of the peloton and still showing no interest at all, but they know they will be attacked on the Col de Mons. So the climb, they've just passed the board, 8.9 kilometres, will top out just over 4,000 feet. There's a man overshot. Serge Powell has gone off wide on that corner.
I'm just having a look to see what his problem was as he went round that corner. A lot of riders, Phil, have actually been going to the team cars at the back saying that they've got flat tyres, but in fact it isn't flat tyres at all once they get back to the team cars. They've been complaining about the softness of the surface of the road.
It's absolutely right. They're blaming the heat of the day, and that is the very reason that Yoshiba Belocchi crashed on the descent in 2003 of the Col de Mons. And that is why I think the organisation has sent 2 water tankers up there to spray the surface of the descent.
Just to try and keep the road surface as cool as possible. It really is quite amazing how the tar in this part of the world bubbles when you start to get these temperatures. It's been like this for the last couple of days, up as high as 37, 38 degrees Celsius. On a number of occasions, it's really been tickling the 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
20 kilometres to go for the 2 leaders, and in the peloton, they're closing in. They're going to give them a 51-second advantage on the climb. If you're not a climber, that could be a very valuable advantage here. But don't forget that Adam Hansen is not what we call a climber, but he can get up hills.
He's a powerful rider, Adam Hansen. He will certainly be happy starting this climb with almost a 1-minute advantage. It's coming down slowly but surely as they start to get into the gradient. But to me, the most important thing about this final climb of the day, Phil, is not really the climb, it's the descent. It's a dramatic and technical descent into the outskirts of Gap. Halle now has got the gap between himself and everyone else. It's Christophe Riblon of France there, moving across a great winner of the Alpe d'Huez stage in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, when the organisation for the 100th anniversary sent the race up Alpe d'Huez on 2 occasions. Daniel Tekle-Heimanot in there as well for Eritrea.
And MTN Quebec looking there at Peter Sagan now. They're beginning to break up, and Thomas Voeckler here, well, he's very often this is a favourite sort of climb for him, but I think he's been in trouble the whole tour, dropping back a little bit there.
23 seconds is the gap. Adam Hansen now is looking over his shoulder. He knows there'll be a response. He will know that he's laid a lot of energy on the valley road leading down to this final climb of the day, and he knows that this is the moment or not to get over the top and start the descent. Hansen is a great descender. We know that. He's got an incredible background as a mountain biker. He won the Crocodile Trophy in the northern parts of Australia on 2 occasions. I wonder if he's going to make it snappy on the run down to the finish. AG2R colours there, the brown and white jersey, knows that this is the time that he has to make the move. He's not one of the riders in this group that has the ability to sprint well, but he knows he has to work hard here to try and get rid of that man in the green jersey. Hansen out of the saddle, fighting with his machine. Daniel Tekle-Heimanot, great to see this rider from Eritrea looking comfortable. A rider who won the King of the Mountains competition in the Criterium de Dauphiné. Now it's Ruben Platzer over the top for Lamprey. These are the moments now. Everyone's looking back. There's still about 4.5 kilometres to go to the top of this climb. Once they hit the King of the Mountains there we see Adam Hansen struggling a little bit. Marco Haller. They left a lot of energy on the flat, but they knew they had to make this a move before they got to the start of the climb. Ruben Platzer is the man who's now the lone leader.
Well, as Platzer grits his teeth and digs in here, they're trying to reorganise, but watch out for Christophe Riblon. He triumphed on Alpe d'Huez a couple of years ago where he beat TJ Van Garderen.
But they all know that if they want to win the stage today, Phil, they've got to get rid of the man in the green jersey, Peter Sagan. He's responded to every attack, and this man, as we've said, he's a rider who still at 25 years of age, I don't think he realises what he's going to be good at in the sport of professional cycling. He can do almost anything. He's a magnificent bike handler. He can sprint, he can climb, but he put on a little bit too much weight in the last couple of years to develop his sprinting ability. But here, what a way he's going uphill. He's taking responsibilities, looking for this win.
Here comes an attack.
Yeah, well, look at how...
Look at Sagan.
Unbelievable, Phil. He's looking for every possible move. He's not going to let anybody slip away. Thomas Voeckler came up there. It's a sort of little psychological move that Thomas Voeckler always makes. Even when he's in difficulty, he likes to try and pretend to everybody that he's in good form. You're not going to get rid of him in a situation like this, but you can never discount Thomas Voeckler. He's a great winner when it comes down to races, although I think he's getting very much nowadays to the autumn of his career. And look at the wind we were talking about. You can see the flags rippling there, and that's an indication that they're pulling on a full headwind. They're not too far away from the right-hand turn towards the top of this climb, and that's when it's a false flat for a couple of kilometres before they really then start to plunge down the technical descent into the outskirts of Gap.
Now, a lot of riders have missed this split on the climb, including Edvald Bosenhagen, and we can't tell you where they are. The computer's just got smoke coming out of it because I think they're all riding alone up the mountain at the moment, trying to work out. That's a very elite group of 9 then chasing. This is the coming together of the peloton as they continue to race towards the base of the Col de Mans.
Well,
look at this, the Lotto Jumbos.
Well, it's amazing, Phil, when you think about it. They're 20 minutes behind, but they still have to race. They're not even thinking about a stage victory this afternoon, but time is of the essence in the Tour de France. There's a massive headwind on the top slopes of this climb, but the leader, although he looks like he's labouring with his style, rolling his shoulders like that, he's actually almost got a minute advantage over everybody else. It's 55 seconds according to Race Radio.
Well, good for Ruben Platzer. That is a very, very plucky move for him there, and he's pushing on. These boys are waiting. Well, I'm not even sure a minute will be good enough to stay clear of Peter Sagan. He descends so quickly in what is agreed to be probably the most dangerous descent of this year's Tour de France. Now we'll see. They're regrouping. He's going with everything, but nobody picking up the pace here.
No, they're not, but there you can see Thomas de Gendt. Interestingly enough, de Gendt is doing a lot of pacemaking in this group, and he did so much work in the early part of the race. I'm surprised to see him still surviving. 1.5 kilometres to the top. Ruben Platzer. 55 seconds is his advantage over a chasing group now, which is 9 riders strong. These riders contain, as you can see in the green jersey, Peter Sagan. Now this is a move. There's an acceleration going to come here from Christophe Riblon, but is he going to catch out to Peter Sagan? No, and the acceleration. Why is everybody chasing down these groups, they're asking? Because Peter Sagan, he wants some organisation, but he's not going to let anybody jump away. Michael Rogers. Oh, Richie Porte. He's being left behind by the yellow jersey group. Also slipping away there is Lars Bak. Plenty of damage now. Jonathan Castroviejo. 10 kilometres to go now for the lone leader, Ruben Platzer. So inside of 10 kilometres to go now, and it's still Peter Sagan hasn't got any friends at all in this group. But you know, if they want to bridge the gap of the 1 minute margin, they're really going to have to collaborate together. I'm not sure why Christophe Riblon's got his hand in the air there, because he was trying to catch everybody out with a surprise attack from the back. But it was one of those attacks that the French call had been telephoned and warned in advance. Roman Kreuziger, Alberto Contador. Contador likes this climb. He knows this climb. It looks as if Chris Froome's in a little bit of difficulty there. 21, Thibaut Pinot. He's just struggling to stay in contact. A bit further behind him is Michael Kerel. Christian Durasek. Now, Geraint Thomas is in third position. Contador just waiting to see if there's any chance, and now watch out for Contador. You know, it's so strange here. We've got 2 different races going on. We've got the race for the stage victory, and then we've also got the race for time amongst the leaders of the overall standings. This is the start of the descent.
Well, we'll see on the descent now, because 55 seconds is a big gap on that descent, and there seems to be nobody wanting to work with Peter Sagan.
Well, Phil, it's so complicated a stage like this because these guys are further back down the road. They're not thinking about a stage victory this afternoon, but they're thinking about time. Tony Galopin, who's the Frenchman who was in 9th place overall, he's been left behind by this group, and it's all because of the power coming from Roman Kreuziger. Alberto Contador knows this climb, but more importantly, maybe, Phil, he knows the descent.
Well, Contador and Froome had difficulties almost at the same time on the descent back in 2013. and Froome was in the yellow then, and Contador and Froome were off their bikes. We'll see what happens this time now as the peloton are going to start hitting each other. They're fighting for seconds. Now we're looking at the peloton. Race Radio is saying that Peter Sagan... Oh no, look at that. That was a lock-up of the wheels by the leader, Platzer. That was a flashback. He settled back in as he continues. I'll tell you, this is a tricky way down.
It's a very tricky technical descent, and you have got to be very careful going around these corners. As we mentioned, Phil, you've got that big problem with the tar starting to melt, which makes it much more precarious. You can lose adhesion in the corners very easily if you come into them at the wrong speed and at the wrong angle.
Calmer but even harder moments on the way up for the peloton as they continue. They're closing in on the leaders. That's to be expected. Froome pedals here on his back wheel of his faithful teammate Geraint Thomas, while you've got Valverde sitting on the wheel off him. Look at this, jams on. Now if he overshoots, what does that say for the rest, because he's the best bike rider?
Well, I was getting reports that Peter Sagan had attacked her. You know, this guy is probably the best bike handler in the business, and he will take every possible risk going down this descent. He knows, Phil, it's a huge deficit to try and bridge on a gap. We're inside of the last 10 kilometres, the last 6 miles of racing, and going downhill like this, that's not much more than 10 minutes of racing into an aerodynamic position. He sees the next corner coming up, he starts to line himself up, goes back over the back wheel a little bit just to put the weight over the back wheel so he can get adherence around that corner. The rider going with him, it looks to me like it's the IAM cycling rider, and he is a Colombian on that squad. Yeah. That is Pantano. Now, what a day it would be if he could get the victory on Colombian Independence Day.
Yes, well, he's riding a brilliant race, Pantano, as well as this is Platzer back in control, and the gap still 48 seconds. This is Reblon being chased by the Colombian.
So the way it looks to me today, the choice is it's all or nothing. It's hospital or podium place. This is a crazy fast descent, and this rider is taking it to the maximum. You can see Peter Sagan dropping all his opinions from that breakaway just by showing his superior bike skills and punching out of these corners with, you know, a lot of horsepower. He wants that win, but Ruben Plaza still ahead. This is coming down to the very last meters of today's stage, and I don't even dare to say who's gonna win, because each corner is a different game for itself.
You're absolutely right, Lens. They may have given him a bit too much, but he's got to get down safely. If you see the way that Peter Sagan shifts his body weight on that bicycle, I'd be convinced he was riding a Moto Grand Prix.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phil, it's almost like a 2-for-1 here. We've got 2 races going on for the price of 1 this afternoon. We've got a race for the glory of winning a stage into Gap, and that's why these guys we're looking at here are taking all kinds of risks to try and get down to the bottom of this climb first and win the stage. But in this group, a little bit further down the road, 18 minutes behind, they are thinking about the positions in the overall standings to win the Tour de France after 3 weeks, and that's why Chris Froome can expect to see challenges coming.
But
once
look at the
this
group.
descent
The group
starts.
is only containing the favourites now. They've blown everybody else away here in the main field. You've got TJ Van Garderen, all the men that matter. The chase goes under 5 kilometres to go. We're finding a new star in the Tour de France here, because Jolinson Pantano is the rider in our camera, riding his first Tour de France. He's a Colombian. He's trying to stay with Peter Sagan.
You see the way Peter Sagan was going around those corners, though, and I have to say, well, no, sorry, that's Roman Kreuziger. His job done for the afternoon. He's slipping away. He had tried to set this up. He's eliminated nearly everybody else in the main field. The one rider missing from the top 10, though, is Tony Galopin, the Frenchman. He obviously felt this just a little bit of a climb too far today. The question is, has this man got enough? It's coming down very, very quickly. He's still holding on to 35 seconds advantage, according to the race radio.
That might be enough, but it's downhill all the way to the line now.
4 kilometres around that corner. Every inch of tarmac that he can, he's using. He swings it around there. He knows her now a little bit further down there. Ruben Plaza is onto the flat road. He's used all of the technical descent. He now has a half a minute's advantage. Watch this here. Peter Sagan, it is magic. It is poetry to watch the way this man handles the bike, although there it's a poetry to watch the way he corrected his line around that corner. Right, he's off the descent now. There's the final right-hand bend onto the main road, and that main road will then line up for a 3-kilometre charge into Gap. Watch the way he handles this. Straight over, full speed ahead around that corner. Now he'll be looking to see if he can see.
He's come out onto the main road now. He's off the most serious part of the descent, but he still has to bridge quite a few seconds. I've got to say half a minute at the moment. That could be too much, you know.
Well, you've got to think about it. As we look at Ruben Plaza here, Phil, he's got a 450-metre advantage over the second-place rider on the road, Peter Sagan. Sagan has finished in second place 8 times over the last couple of years. He hasn't won a stage in the Tour de France since 2013. He's won the King of the Sprint competition 3 years in a row. He is itching. He will do everything he can to close down 450 metres, but it's going to be so very, very difficult.
Now look at this group, Paul. These are the men who are challenging to win the Tour de France. They're still locked together there. The top 6 riders still in that group as that peloton has shrunk to nothing. Ruben Plaza is trying to push on now for what would be the biggest victory of his life, and his career started 16 years ago.
Well, just looking down at this, I'm not sure if you're still online with us there, Jensi, but do you think that Peter Sagan, he's a special guy, but has he got enough time left to catch the lone leader? It's looking like he's running out to me.
No, there's not enough kilometers left and way too much time out there. Not even Peter Sagan, you're not even the best time trial in the world, can chase down 30 seconds and 2 kilometers. There would be 15 seconds, but no, it's no way. Sagan is going to finish second, and Plaza has it. Plaza has it, and he deserved. He took his chances, he went out early, so it's a well-deserved win, and unfortunately for Peter, he's going to finish second again.
The second place for Peter Sagan, but also, Paul, more points in green jersey. I think today he probably took enough points to have won that green jersey in Paris.
But Phil, I don't think he was thinking about that competition this afternoon. This is a man who's been itching to get a stage victory. Coming alongside him, up behind him there is Pantano, the Colombian rider, and for Peter Sagan now, you know, he tried.
Never mind, he tried. But what about the man taking third? Celebrates Colombia's Independence Day. First time Tour rider, third on this stage, Jorgensen Pantano. Then comes Simon Geschke, Bob Jungels, Christophe Reblon. Thomas de Gent here.
Yeah, Thomas de Gent. Daniel Tekla-Hyman. It's been a big day, Phil, for FDJ Quebec, because they're going to leap up the team classification at the end of today. And what a lot of work was done by Thomas de Gent.
Right, well, that's the first segment of the Tour de France over, but remember there is now a race for the men who are challenging to win this race in Paris, and they are all locked together at around about 18 minutes further back.
Yes, there's a double header here this afternoon. It's almost as if you're going to the cinema and have 2 movies in the same afternoon. Thomas Voeckler crosses the line there and puts his head down a fraction. He was in the right move at the right time. But there we go. This is where we'll see the next phase of the race take place.
Oh, and there's little tack, and that looks like it might be Bardet. Bardet it is who's gone. Now he's trying to claim a few seconds here and continue his ascent of the classification. That's caused the reaction. Alejandro Valverde's gone to take Contador with him, Vincenzo Nibali, and of course the yellow jersey, followed by Quintana.
Well, there's been a serious decanting here for the quality, Phil, because if you look at the names of the riders in that group behind, it really is top class. All of the big men are up there. I think Bardet really there just attacking a little bit for pride, Phil, to try and see whether or not he could get himself up into the top 10 in the overall standings, and maybe to try and leapfrog Warren Barguil, who sits at 2 minutes ahead of him. But, you know, that came to naught, and it just goes to show that Alejandro Valverde has got great form. This is, I think, a little bit of an appetizer of what's to come over the next few days of racing when we get up into the Alps.
From this is Warren Barguil who's gone. Well, trying to gain seconds. These 2 Frenchmen are trying to get up the overall classification.
Another youngster who had a very difficult start to the Tour de France with an accident. They're not too concerned about him. You see how they're looking at each other. And Warren Barguil, I think, may well move up into the top 10 today, because one of the top 10 riders missed out on the split there, and that's Tony Galopin. It's always a question of pride for the Frenchman to be best placed French rider in the Tour de France. This guy says, well, I'm not concerned about being the best French rider. I want to be a rider who can finish on the podium in a couple of years' time.
Well, it's a good way to start, and Contador is warming up for an attack. Bardet's got his back wheel, so too has Alessandro Valverde, and now there's got to be reaction from the others here. 3 big names going. A little lifting of the pace there, as now it is Chris Froome himself who's catching up.
When push comes to shove, Chris Froome always takes the responsibility. He knows he can't let Contador, Alejandro Valverde go, and straight onto his wheel is the white jersey, Nairo Quintana. Contador looks back. Look at that grimace. That grimace all over his face there looks a little bit like a smile. Now as Froome starts to lose numbers, it looks as if his teammate there has gone. But Nibali goes over the top.
That one might work because he's got a little bit of time behind to find, and now Vincenzo Nibali, who steadily got back into this year's Tour after winning it last year, he started the move. Contador, is he going to try Hessingis?
Robert Hessing now for Lotto Jumbo trying to make the move, but you know, the way they're attacking here on this part of the course just indicates to me that we're going to have a massive battle on the downhill, and I just hope they have had the warning from their team managers about how precarious the descent is, and they know which of the corners to keep a close eye on.
Look at the speed of Nibali climbing this hill.
Yep, 37 kilometres an hour, and let's not forget TJ Van Garderen, who starts today in 3rd place in the overall standings. He's right on the wheel there of the yellow jersey. He knows how important the next few days are for him. He said before the start of this Tour de France he didn't want to finish 5th again. He's finished 5th on 2 previous occasions. He wants the podium, and the way this race unfolds, that is still not out of his sights.
Well, who's going to make the next move? Geraint Thomas was yo-yoing. He's gone straight back to the front, to the side of Chris Froome there. Nibali is getting on with this at the moment.
I think that was Wout Poels coming back to the front there. He went off the back and then seemed to recover quite a bit. It's Wout Poels has come right back to the front. Behind him is Geraint Thomas. So Poels, to me, looked as if he was going out of the back, but he realises how many attacks are going to come to his leader, so he found something from somewhere, came back up to the front to help out the team. And although
safely round at the moment, though, Wout Poels here coming back slowly. All he says, let me get back to these groups. Chris Froome needs me by his side. That's his ambition. As soon as he gets back, he'll try and get up to Chris Froome.
That's correct, that, Phil, because as well, when you've got the break like this happening up the slopes of the previous climb, the team cars at the moment could be 1 and 2 minutes behind, so you have to have an extra team man up there in case you've got a mechanical incident at this point, because if Geraint Thomas, who's 6th overall, or Chris Froome have a mechanical incident this time, you've got to pass the bike. You've just got to get a bike across them as quickly as possible to keep them into the race, because if they have to wait for a service vehicle, no chance.
And Valverde is a very good descender there as he leads them down here, and it looks to me as though Chris Froome is trying to mark it. Wout Poels here having a job to get onto the tail as we speed away down to Gap. Don't forget the winner of the day, Ruben Plaats, is waiting for these boys to finish so he can claim the first prize. He sat down watching these pictures.
Yeah, but just look at the yellow jersey. Chris Froome straight up into 2nd position. I think this is the corner. Just watch out for this corner as they come around there.
Somebody had his foot down on that bend as they went round that corner, and there's been a crash there on that bend. It was Warren Barguil. Somebody's gone into the crowd as well. Take a look on your right bottom.
Well, he was going too quickly.
Oh, and he collided with Geraint Thomas, I think, who really hit the telegraph pole. Oh, dear me.
Well,
that was Geraint Thomas there as he crashed over the tapes. It's not a fence, that. And the spectators there.
That was Barguil's fault, Phil. He was coming into that corner
he'd lost control, hadn't he? Yeah.
Oh, dear.
He lost control and split the field here now, because now we've got Valverde, Froome and Quintana. These continue the chase. Warren Barguil has recovered and continues to chase. Let's have a look at that again. There was the hit by Barguil.
That was the corner I was telling you about.
Crowd on that telegraph pole by poor Geraint Thomas there.
That was a hard crash. That was a very, very nasty crash. This man doesn't know anything at all about it, Vincenzo Nibali.
Wout Poels, he's got joined Barguil, who was hesitating after that shunt on the descent. The descent continues. This is Bardet driving now, and he's picked up with Valverde. Then you've got TJ Van Garderen, who's now moved up right onto the back wheel of Chris Froome. This man is only 11 seconds ahead. It's no gains at all, really, for Nibali.
Well, he's still making the moves. He's still taking all of the risks going down this descent, and that just accentuates, Phil, why you've got to be very, very careful in the Tour de France. It's not always on the uphill and the mountaintop finishes that things happen and things get decided. I just hope that Geraint Thomas is okay, because that was a very, very nasty crash a few moments ago, and he couldn't do anything at all about it. It was just, he had his bike taken from underneath him.
Well, there's no update coming from the race, of course. It is all moving so fast at the moment. But Chris Froome has everything under control in this lead group. He won't be too concerned about the fast descent of Vincenzo Nibali. 11 seconds when you're 8 minutes and 17 seconds behind is not going to cause any concern.
Well, we've been talking about that descent all day, Phil. Not necessarily the uphill climb to the summit of the Col de Mons, but this technical downhill, it's been, this descent, Phil, has had its word on the Tour de France so many times over the years. Now we can see just a little bit. This is Scarponi just coming onto the back.
Well, and Galopin has lost now nearly 3 minutes there, so he is beginning to tumble away. He's getting very close to the 10th place of Wout Mollema, who's up in this group here. So they are losing time, but they haven't lost their positions overall yet. 16 seconds now, and that little shunt may have set them off the mark as Nibali continues to gain a little bit of time.
You see how Froome, though, Phil, is being so very careful. He's moved up into second position. That reduces the chances of any accident happening to him. He's following Valverde down this descent. He's not doing the descent himself. He doesn't want to take any risks. He just wants to keep a close eye on affairs.
Steep adverse cambers right-hander there. Barguil goes through the rider that collided with Geraint Thomas on that descent. 4 kilometre banner, there we are.
Well, you know, just talking to Barguil before the start of the Tour de France, Phil, we were asking him about the accidents he had and if he was a bit of a crazy man going downhill, and he said, no, I know how to go downhill fast, and there, for me, he was taking too much of a risk coming into the corner.
His line was totally out.
He was on the wrong side of the road. Yeah. Alejandro Valverde, well, he's looking comfortable going around here. He's covered all of the time there by Chris Froome. Bardet is up there, TJ Van Garderen, and well, this looks like a man.
This is Galopin, isn't it?
Yeah, it is Galopin. He's
I'm
actually
not sure
just
where
cruising.
he is right now, apart from the fact he's nearly 3 minutes behind the yellow jersey group and possibly losing his high place overall.
Well, Vincenzo Nibali has come off the descent now through Pont-Sarrazin. He's now on the final 3 and a bit kilometres down into the town of Gap. He gets into the low-profile position. He hasn't got that much of an advantage over the rest. It's between 14 and 15 seconds as this group now comes into the long line down towards the finish in Gap. Go right the way down to Faris through the next few days into the mountains. I think the rest day coming just about the right time here, but he will ride right up to the line to just grab a few seconds here and there, and it's all about the time.
So Nibali crosses the line, checks out who they were chasing. He's lost over 17 3/4 minutes to the winner. That doesn't matter. Here comes Robert Hessing setting the pace, and looks as though Contador might even want to sprint this to prove a point. Well, watch out, because Chris Froome has a habit of proving a point when he comes to the sprint. There he goes. And as always, Froome won't take any of it. He likes to remind everybody how good he is, but maybe this time he's going to allow it to happen as Contador brings them home here with Bauke Mollema. 18 minutes and 11 seconds down. And there he is. Well done, Geraint Thomas. What was a spectacular crash. Can't see any marks on his jersey. He is coming home. He's the second rider here as they drive up to the finish.
Well, that is phenomenal, Phil, to bounce back from that. It just goes to show how good Geraint Thomas is in the Tour. When I saw that crash, Phil, I didn't think he would get himself back up there. It looked so dramatic from the helicopter. This is courage. This is what it's all about. He's defending his position in the overall standings. He wants to stay right up there. He was 6th overall at the start of the day.
You know what?
Chapeau, I have to say.
I've got a feeling Geraint may have protected his 6th place overall. Robert Gesink will have closed it down, but he may not have taken it. That was incredible. Andrew Talansky coming home here. 19 minutes has slipped by for the American, bringing the next group home.
And he deserves it, Phil, because he made the move. He was the one who took the responsibility of the attack on the Col de Mons. He knew there would be a big reaction behind, and he knew the only way he could win the stage was to get ahead of Peter Sagan. That's what he did. He took the risk, and he had the firepower to carry it out.
Well, we'll continue to spin around the city of Gap as we wait for, these are the Classement General, the GC. Froome 3:10 ahead of Quintana, Van Garderen, Valverde, Contador. Thomas has held his 6th place over Robert Gesink, which is terrific. I don't know how he did it, but fantastic, living in the true tradition of the Tour de France.
Well, I'm just amazed. I'm very pleased to see that he managed to get himself back up there, and not a question of retaining his place, but just to stay on the bike and look as if he wasn't too severely damaged coming up there. Warming down, this has become a part of the course over the last few years. It was Team Sky who actually introduced this warming down process. And as you can see, Nairo Quintana having a chat there. I think the way they're talking here, Phil, I think they're actually talking about the accident, because they're talking about the way they're using the hand signals. That's an indication they're talking about the lines coming into the corner.
Stage 17 of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you for the start of the most crucial phase of this year's race. The peloton enters the Alps for 4 big days of climbing to determine who will wear yellow in Paris on Sunday. Stage 17, and we are into the Alps from Digne-les-Bains through to Pré-Loup. It's 161 kilometres, and there is 2 Category 3 climbs early in the stage. Then there's a Category 2 climb, followed by the biggest climb of the day, which is a Cat 1, and then the final ascent to Pré-Loup itself, which, although it's only a Category 2 climb, it's tough right at the finish line. Rolling out from Digne-les-Bains, and things got underway, as they have done for the past 2 and a bit weeks, in fast fashion. And Peter Sagan in the green jersey has been right in the thick of the action once again, as he always has been throughout this year's race. One non-starter after the rest day, and that's Laurent Didier, the Luxembourg rider from Trek Factory Racing. And we've recently had the news of the abandonment of the Frenchman Jérôme Capel, who rides with the IM cycling squad. And now we cut to the action. This is Rafael Majka, along with his teammate Peter Sagan, who once again is in the breakaway. It's extraordinary. Thibaut Pinot is the rider who sits behind him in the white colours from FDJ. He's now on the search for a stage victory throughout this year's race. But the most significant news so far on the stage is in the 4th group at 3 minutes and 30 seconds behind. TJ Van Garderen, the American who started the day in 3rd position overall. And we've heard on race radio that Van Garderen has been calling for the neutral medical service that's provided by the race organisers. Well, Poles, now on the front for the team leader of Chris Froome, the team of Chris Froome, the leader of the race. Leo Koenig sits behind him. It is then Geraint Thomas. The race is scattered all over the road. This group containing Chris Froome is at 44 seconds behind a group of 20 with Sagan and Rafael Majka. And this is at the back of the group that contains the yellow jerseys. Look to Marcel Weiss from IM Cycling. Also, Astana Scott, Jakob Fuglsang, who's just signed an extension with that team. Another group of riders rejoining the yellow jersey group. It is sure to be an aggressive stage if this is any indication. An average speed so far, with a Category 3 climb already ascended, of 44.3 kilometres per hour. Across the first climb of the day, it was Rafael Majka who collected the points, ahead of Christian Jurasek from the Lampre team. And then we saw the next of the attacks by Peter Sagan. They start the next climb of the day, the Col de Tutor. It's a Category 3 climb, but it's relatively long. It's 6.3 kilometres in length, but it's not all that steep at just 3.1%. This is Van Garderen, the beautiful Castillon Lake that we're now getting a chance to enjoy. And Serge Pals is in this group for MTM Quebecer. So too is Daniel Tekla-Harmanot. Ryder Hejadal is here in the green colours for Kendall Garmin team. The man in the green jersey sitting behind him, Peter Sagan. It's then Rafael Majka, who's already won a stage this year. There's Rafael Majka having a drink as we look to see Peter Sagan. What a race it has been for Peter Sagan so far. Andre Greipel, after stage 16, just before the rest day, he put out a tweet saying, in my opinion, after today, Peter Sagan is the strongest rider with the highest pain threshold in this race, and we're proud to be able to contest with him even just for a while. Rigoberto Urán from the edX Quick-Step team, a man who loves the climbs. He's been second twice at the Giro d'Italia. And this is Adam Yates from Orica Green Edge. Andrew Talansky also in this group from the Kendall Garmin squad, along with his teammate Ryder Hejadal. And a few riders in there from Movistar. Castrovejo was in there, so too Herrera. And they're two strong climbers from the Movistar squad. Great lieutenants for Valverde. And of course, Nairo Quintana by the end of the stage. Expect plenty of action from them. And in fact, Movistar, they've got 3 riders in that leading group. In addition to Herrera and Castrovejo, they've also got Izaguirre. And Simon Geschke is in the break from the Giant Alpecin team. We've seen a bit of him over the last few stages. Jean-Christophe Perrault continues to battle on through with all those injuries. He's earning a lot of respect, and understandably so. He has said that this will be his last Tour de France, and next year he wants to go out on a high note at the Giro d'Italia. He's 38 years of age. He graced the podium last year at 37. And it was a glorious moment when he was informed after the final individual time trial that he'd be on the podium in Paris. TJ Van Garderen, if the race computer is correct, he sits at 2 minutes and 30 seconds behind the yellow jersey group of Chris Froome. And he is just at the base of this Category 3 climb. No reports of him having had a fall or anything of that ilk. It just appears as if TJ Van Garderen is under the weather. And Louis Vestre showing some concern from the Astana team, having a brief conversation with TJ Van Garderen. This is Damiano Caruso, who is with him, teammate from BMC. So too is Rowan Dennis. He's also in this group. Jose Mendes is the rider in the black colours. Return to the front of the race. Simon Geschke with the beard. Thibaut Pinot for FDJ. He has declared he's on the hunt for a stage victory. He's not fussed where he finishes overall now. It's not going to be anywhere near his 3rd place finish last year. And Mahawi Kudos is also in the break from MTM Quebecer, the youngest rider in the race. Great to see him off the front. He rode strongly at this year's Giro d'Italia. Top 10 finish for him there. 1 minute and 41 seconds now the advantage for that leading group of 28 riders. And there's a fall from Astana team. This is Louis Vestre, who was in the group with TJ Van Garderen not too long ago, and was only just moving forward. He looked as if he was relatively comfortable. He's anything but comfortable now. And this is on a Category 3 climb, so I wonder how it happened. And the team sports director is concerned about his health, as the mechanic is concerned about the health of the bike. Good signs for Team Sky. They've got Richie Porte in the breakaway group, which ensures that there will be someone to support Chris Froome at the back end of the stage, in addition to Geraint Thomas, who has been outstanding in this year's race. This is Matthias Frank sitting at the back of the group in the blue colours. He's the rider in this contingent of 28 who is the closest to the yellow jersey of Chris Froome at 14 minutes and 23 seconds behind. So he's not challenging Chris Froome, but he is putting himself in a position to perhaps scratch his way into the top 10. And news just coming through over race radio that Nathan Huss has abandoned the race. So the Australian from Canberra, who we saw in the breakaway on the road to Rhodes and was really animating that breakaway group. In fact, he attacked the breakaway with 20 kilometres remaining. Unfortunately, race radio just informing us that Nathan is on his way home, not to Canberra, but to Girona. Most of the riders in the race will know this stage pretty well because the exact same stage was raced at the Critérium de Dauphiné in June. It was Romain Bardet who won the stage. As we look at Serge Pales just forcing the issue at the front, he figures the group is a little bit too big, so he wants to split things up. When this stage was raced at the Critérium de Dauphiné and Romain Bardet did win, he laid down the foundations for his victory with the descent coming off the penultimate climb. And it was stomach turning. He reaches the top of the climb and he collects 2 more points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. The leader of that classification is Chris Froome with a 9-point buffer over Joaquim Rodriguez. Peter Sagan in that group is still got 43 kilometres to go before he gets to the intermediate sprint point. And he can collect himself another 20 points in the race for the green jersey. 16 stages completed so far, and Peter Sagan has finished in the top 5 in 11 of those stages. 5 second-place finishes. The last man to finish in second place 5 times in a stages at the Tour de France was way back in 1999 with Alex Zula, who also went on to finish in second position overall in that year's Tour de France. Kind of. The honour roll for that year's Tour de France is the one with the explanation mark next to it. Not a good day for BMC. This is Louis Meintjes from MTM Quebec. The world champion is also here, number 111. Their team confirming, edX Quickstep confirming that Michael Kwiatkowski will be leaving the team at the end of the season. As Van Garderen fades away. One of the great challenges of Grand Tour racing is that ability just to back up day in, day out. And it's the brilliance of Chris Froome. He's just so robust. Doesn't appear to have those bad days. He faded ever so slightly towards the end of the Tour in 2013. Not sure whether it's just the psychological games or not, but on the rest day yesterday he confirmed that he's not fading. He's got a long descent now down into the town of Hainaut, and then it's through the feed zone and onto the next climb of the day, which is the Col Saint-Michel, a Category 2 climb that takes them to 1,400 metres above sea level. Peter winning, the big Dutchman at the back of the main peloton. Sylvain Chavanel, the rider who sits behind him, the experienced Frenchman. One of the stories coming out of stage 16 into Gap was courtesy of the Irishman Dan Martin, who said that one of the positives out of the stage was that he was stung 3 times by a wasp, but he discovered that he's not allergic to it. Well, that is good news. The fact that he's not allergic anyway. And the Van Garderen group are almost across the top of the climb. The Astana colours with Louis Vestre also in that group. Angelo Turlik from Europcar collects a water bottle from the obliging Astana Soignier off on the side of the road. Europcar, that squad in the green colours. As we see Angelo just douse himself in water trying to stay cool. They're searching for €5.5 million to be able to stay afloat for next season. And the team manager and owner, Jean-René Bernadeau, said yesterday to his riders, give me 15 more days. If I haven't got a sponsor secured for next season within the next 15 days, go searching for a contract elsewhere. A few of those riders will be pretty valuable on the open market, particularly Pierre Rolland. Pierre Rolland sitting in 15th position overall here. He's only really lost time on the flat stages and he's looked very good in the mountains. So Adam Yates in the breakaway today for the Orica Green Edge team. The Yates twins been bouncing back and forward. Good days and bad days, just 22 years of age. It's understandable that they're a little inconsistent, but the signs for the future are very promising. Their sports director, Matt White, has made it pretty clear he hasn't want them to come here and try and ride for a high place overall. The main focus at this point has to be to look for stage victories. And he knows the territory pretty well, Simon Yates anyway. It's Adam who's in the breakaway today. But Simon Yates rode this stage, the corresponding stage in the Criterium de Dauphiné, fairly successfully just a few weeks ago. As we return to the breakaway group. This is Rafael Valls at the back of the group from the Lamprey team. Rafael Majka is the rider that sits in front of him. And as I've mentioned before, despite Sagan and Contador getting all the attention for Tinkoff Saxo, their stage winner is Rafael Majka. Luke Rowe on the front from Team Sky. Down to 8 riders after the abandonment on stage 16 of Peter Kenyak, the British national champion. And good to see Richie Port in the breakaway today. He said he suffered from a chest infection throughout the middle week of this year's race. He's now just starting to come good. He's not quite in the form that he was at the Tour of Italy, where unfortunately he crashed out, but he is on the up. That's a good sign for the future. As for the crowd's response to Team Sky, he said he's found that a little bit difficult and that he's found it quite pathetic having fully grown men booing at him on the road. But he is dealing with the pressure. This is one of his teammates, Nicholas Roach, at the back of the group. This is the leading group of 28 riders with Nicholas Roach sitting at the back for the Sky team. And he's got his teammate Richie Port up here with him as well. Those two, they won't be doing any of the pacemaking. They'll just be trying to get as easy a ride as possible so they're in the right position to support Chris Froome, if need be, towards the back end of the stage. It's up to the others to attack Froome. He does not have to move. Heading to Pré-Loup today, which famously was first used in the Tour de France 40 years ago, 1975, when Eddie Merckx was wearing the yellow jersey. Target to win the Tour for the 6th time, a record 6th time. But it didn't happen. A Frenchman upstaged him. Bernard Thévenet took the yellow jersey from Merckx, and Merckx would never wear yellow again in his career from that point onwards. It was an extraordinary display of descending from Peter Sagan on the stage into Gap, and then we saw that horrific crash with Geraint Thomas. There could have been so much more. And the Frenchman Warren Barguil just slipping up the inside, rubbing shoulders with the Welshman, and Thomas going off into that power pole. He really showed his sense of humour afterwards, Geraint Thomas. In an interview directly after the stage, he was asked the question as to what was the response when you picked yourself back up. Medical service was there. They asked me a few questions, like, what's your name? I told them, I'm Chris Froome. It was classic Geraint Thomas. And as good as Peter Sagan was on that descent down into Gap, you've got to give some credit to Jalison Pantano. Although he couldn't keep up with Peter Sagan, I've labelled Pantano now a pretty good descender because at least he was able to stay with him for a while. 84 kilometres to go precisely. Let's head across to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
Looking out now across the beautiful area here, the valleys as we race along, going to the next climb now, which will be the Col de la Col Saint-Michel. And that is a second category climb. It's 11 kilometres, 7 miles long when we get there. TJ could do with closing the gap before that slope starts, that's for sure. And a little bit of a service call from Danilo Wies at the back there as we twist our way away from the climb of the Tour Ores. 2:20 the gap now for these 28 front runners to the main field.
I think of what a class rider this man is.
There's John Degenkolb, another sprinter here, also slipping down the back at the moment. Well, Peter Sagan, he's more or less making the green jersey his, but difficult day for him to get points. It comes right down into the heart of the race today after about 115 kilometres or so. So he's still a little way to go to get any points, but he's actually looking for a stage win, and he won't give up trying. 5 second places so far.
Yeah, and in fact, Phil, you've got to go back 30 years to see somebody who got to the second place on 5 occasions, and that, of course, was the great Sean Kelly, and he won the green jersey when he eventually rode into Paris that year.
It was indeed. As we're looking at the leaders here as they continue on the descent, there's some big names up here. Rafał Majka putting in a bid perhaps today for points in the King of the Mountains. The interesting change of tactic by Sky, putting Porte and Roche in the front group. I think if the gap gets big or Froome gets in trouble behind, you might see those two slowing down and waiting for him coming up the mountain, and they would be fantastic pacemakers to bring him up to Pralu. So it's a very good move by Team Sky and a complete change around of their tactics.
Yeah, what about Team MTN Quebec? 3 riders from MTN Quebec getting into the breakaway. The 2 riders from Eritrea, Mhawe Kudus, Daniel Tekle-Heimanot, and of course the Belgian rider Serge Pauwels.
It's a very good move. They moved into second place in the team race the day before the rest day, and now the 2 teams that are 1 and 2 are Movistar and MTN Quebec, and they've both got 3 men in the front group. So Movistar quite clearly are now taking the African threat very seriously indeed. 2 minutes 20 seconds, it's the only time you've got, but I can tell you that the group containing primarily TJ Van Garderen is at 4 minutes and 45 seconds, so Van Garden's losing ground now, Paul. 2 minutes 25 down.
Yes, and he's having a hard time just staying in contact with the group. As I say, Phil, we can't get access yet. The team have admitted that he is sick, and that's coming probably just overnight, because we have pictures of him riding with the team yesterday on the rest day, and he seemed to appear okay in the images that we had. And who knows how quickly things can develop in the Tour de France. I do know from experience that once you get the smallest little ailment in the Tour de France, it seems to be accentuated just so much more and so much more quickly.
Halfway through the stage for the front group now, 80.4 done, 80.5 to go, as they enter now the zone de ravitaillement, which is the feeding station for the 28 front runners with a lead of 2:17.
Yes, so 28 riders at the front. There's some big names in that leading group. Obviously, Peter Sagan and Rafał Majka. Majka could be thinking about points in the King of the Mountains competition. But maybe more importantly, in the breakaway rider, Hejjedal and Andrew Talansky. Talansky, the American, you just see him slipping back there in the lighter lime green jersey. He is 17th overall at the start of the day. A rider who's finished in 10th place overall previously, Peter Sagan. He leads the green jersey points competition with a very comfortable advantage. Right now, 405 points to 316 in that competition. The best placed rider in the leading group is Matthias Frank. And Matthias Frank, in fact, was 13th overall at the start of the day, looking for 14.5 minutes. So it doesn't seem as if the yellow jersey group is giving this breakaway too much of an advantage as we move through the little town there of in the mountains here. And in fact, there's a lot of sandstone appearing here amongst the limestone deposits. And it gives this background, this rocky background, a very unique look in the world. But as we look there, as the little limestone outcroppings there, some of these sandstone blocks were created 40 million years ago.
Well, just looking here at the beautiful village just down there, yet another one, and it looks like Anno, and it is Anno.
Absolutely, it's a magnificent village, and in fact it's renowned for sitting on a very interesting rocky outcropping of limestone and sandstone, which gives it that very interesting reddish colour. Team Sky have got a lot of riders in the group, and most of the major contenders are in this group, but I suppose the big story of the day is TJ Van Garderen still struggling to keep in contact in the main field. In fact, he's just made back about half a minute, because race radio is telling us he's 2 minutes behind the yellow jersey group at the moment, and I just wonder, can he recover? A man who started the day, Phil, in third place and was dreaming about a podium finish in Paris, having one of those days that everybody wants to forget in a Tour de France.
Well, we're looking at the American Andrew Talansky on the front here. They've just gone through the feeding station. He is in the breakaway, of course, and so he's coming forward to pick up his food bag, perhaps. Anyway, and they're making their way through. Well, let's hope he can recover. He's halfway through the race at the moment today.
Well, getting themselves organised now. They've yes, they have gone through the exact halfway point. 80 kilometres covered when they went through the feeding station there, and now that leaves 80 kilometres to go to the finish, up to the climb of Pralou. And Pralou, by the way, if you make the translation, it means the area of the wolves up in the high prairie, and the word pra is the local language slang for a high prairie. Looking there is Simon Geschke. He's the man with the full set beard. And also interesting to note that Team Movistar have been very attentive in this group here this afternoon, because Castroviejo has got into this move with the Herrera and Izagirre, and let's not forget that they are the team who are leading the best team competition. They've got a 20-minute advantage in that competition ahead of MTN Kubeka, and Kubeka have got 3 riders in this leading group: Tekla Heimanot and Mohawi Kudus of Eritrea and Serge Pauwels of Belgium. But obviously that will keep them very, very high up. Team Sky have just got 2 riders in the group, and Team Tinkoff have got 2 riders in the group, but there is still a very, very long way to go. The gap between the leading group of 28 riders is now 2 minutes and 52 seconds, and the group of TJ Van Garderen, the American, a little bit further back. It's not just TJ Van Garderen, but there are some other very big names in that group. The world champion Michael Kwiatkowski is in that group, and so it's difficult to know exactly what's happened to him. There's also the South African who rode extremely well on this course in the Criterium de Dauphiné, Louis Meintjes. He is in the back group as well, so maybe he also having a little bit of a hard time the day after the rest day.
I'm hearing, Paul, in fact, TJ Van Garderen is complaining of a severe headache, and it wasn't seen coming by the team, and they are very despondent about it. They're just taking it literally climb by climb today as to whether he continues or not.
You know, you never know, Phil. The thing is, the altitude can actually react very strangely on riders' bodies in a space of 24 hours. And I have to admit that I normally live at altitude around about 4,500 feet in Kampala. But I must admit, over the last couple of days, having stayed at altitude, I had a little bit of a headache towards the back as well. And let's not forget there's been the big storms coming through, and that's been a lot to do with the change in pressure in the area. So who knows exactly what has happened to TJ Van Garderen. Just hope that he can ride through it, because sometimes you go through that bad patch in the first part of the race and you recover, and then all of a sudden everything comes back.
Well, he's into the second part right now. Stage 17, Paul. You rode 7 tours, 2 you didn't finish. What stage did you abandon?
Oh, I knew you'd ask me that. 17. In fact, it was in this area the last time that I abandoned the Tour de France, and it was on the slopes of the Col de la Madeleine. And it's just one of those things. It just seems to be, and if you look through the history of the Tour de France, there's always a lot of riders actually abandon around about stage 17. You've got over the first 2 weeks, fatigue is starting to creep into the body, and their body's resistance to injury and illness seems to just get to its lowest on day 17.
3 minutes 13, 76.8 kilometres left to ride. But looking at the breakaway here, which contains 3 of the M2N Quebecer squad and also 3 of the Movistar squad and 2 from Team Sky. And they don't normally take part in breakaways unless they've got Chris Froome with them. And so they've been sent out, we are convinced, as the advance guard. So they have 2 men up the road when the big mountain comes, the Col d'Alos.
Yeah, as I say, just a quick look at the back there, Phil, and I know you're a railway buff, and just over to the right-hand side you can see that rail. Well, that's a bit modern for the sort of railway trains that you like, but Phil, this is the old route from Nice to Digne-les-Bains. It was part of the old Compagnie de Chemin de Fer de Provence, and they used to run really magnificent steam trains along here, and which is a very, very panoramic route.
Which is why this train has beautiful panoramic vision, so you can enjoy the scenery of the Alps here. A little bit more modern. The railroad these days is The riders have gone by, they wouldn't have noticed any of that. The Chemin de Provence, it's exactly what you just said.
Well, thank you very much.
It's on the side of the train now.
By the way, it's 151 kilometres long, so I think you could probably do the whole of today's stage in the car in the railway train there, and probably. Now this is interesting, Phil, because just looking here, he's about to get himself back up to the leading group.
Well, there was there was no indication at all from the computer about that comeback, but it looks as though he's pedalled his way back into the bunch. The overall gap is now 3:20.
Is the rider on the front with the Union flag on his sleeve. Big strong rider, Stannard. Had a very nasty accident last year, and that was in the early part of the season, and that was a tough accident for Stannard. He crashed in Wevelgem and got himself back, but I think a bit of calm now, Phil, returning to the main field.
Well, this will be Simon Yates just dropping off the back there with looking for Bottles. His twin brother is up in front. Oh, it's Peter Weening actually, but his twin brother is up in front, Adam Yates today. They've been given apparently a free rein to do what they want to do in the Tour de France, which is unusual in a tour team. But they are good climbers. If they feel good, they've been told they can go and have a go. And Adam Yates has gone into that front group today.
11 kilometres to go to the summit of the next climb of the day, and it is a pretty long climb, that, Phil. I would expect it's going to take them about 25 minutes. It's not a massively steep climb that they're lining themselves up to. It's around about 5.5% gradient, but it's a 6.8 mile climb. The breakaway, I think, will start to extend their advantage there, because I'm not really sure who is going to be keen to pull back that breakaway. It's a breakaway of 28 riders today, and
some big names in there. Names who
well, saying that now, this is interesting. This is Contador.
This is Contador. Suddenly decided to
with
line
Michael
it all
Rogers.
up. Michael Rogers is pacemaker. Now, what's Froome going to do about that?
Well, you know, Alberto Contador is a fighter. He's a gladiator of the road, and he's decided, right, you know, there's a little bit of calm coming, so I'm off, mate.
He said in this morning's papers here, he certainly hadn't given up all of it, any hope whatsoever of winning the Tour de France, and he always rides well in the Alps, and there's a move, and that's going to cause a little bit of uncertainty back in the pack.
Well, Phil, this is an 11-kilometre climb, and let's not forget it was in this race, it was a very aggressive stage in the Criterium du Dauphiné, and that will really put the worries on a number of riders. And for Alberto Contador to make a move like that with Michael Rogers, you have to take this move extremely seriously, because Michael Rogers is a guy who really has a big engine. We've seen him win last year in one of his best seasons, really, for Michael Rogers. He won 2 stages in the Giro d'Italia and a stage in the Tour de France.
Yes, Rogers is the brains, if you like, behind the outfit there. He's the team captain. There's the average of the second hour, very quick, 41.7 overall today, nearly 43 kilometres an hour in the hills.
Well, this is a move that you cannot but take seriously, because of the fact that Michael Rogers has gone clear with his team leader Alberto Contador. They realise, because this is a long climb, it's an 11-kilometre climb. Even though the breakaway is a long way up, you have to bear in mind that in the breakaway you have Rafael Majka and you also have Peter Sagan. Now, those riders, if this move starts to get clear of the main field, they've got a very good tactical advantage of having 2 riders from the same team in the breakaway group, and I think that's what they've seen all of a sudden. Michael Rogers, as soon as he felt that Alberto Contador was in with a chance. Let's have a look now at the speed here. You can see the speed of Alberto Contador, 27.5 kilometres an hour. In fact, the speed of Chris Froome, given as 28 kilometres an hour. So they're obviously really picking up the pace. But in fact, the team that responded first was not Team Sky. The team who are really doing the pacemaking is the team of Movistar, of Nairo Quintana and Alejandro Valverde. So, Contador is a magical racer, a man who knows how to race, loves to race, and loves to go on these long raids, showing no fear. He knows he's got nothing to lose. Alberto Contador, the winner this year of the Giro d'Italia, wore the pink jersey for 16 days. He lost it part-way through. He had a very nasty injury with a crash on the 5th stage. Quick chat there to Michael Rogers. He doesn't want to get rid of Michael Rogers here, so he came comfortably past Michael Rogers and asked Michael Rogers to stick with him. But there is a big response, and the riders are going to be in difficulty again.
Now a lovely move, and Kwiatkowski in desperate trouble again on the climb. He was off the back with TJ Van Garderen. He's losing ground again as this climb starts to bite. Contador on the wheel of Michael Rogers. That's a great move.
Well, it is a great
move from our point of view. It may
Well,
work out to be a tough move by him.
Well, all of a sudden,
anyway,
I've just thought it looks as if Alberto Contador has now decided he's going. He's left Michael Rogers behind, but you know, the response was not coming from Sky. The response was coming. Look at the rider just behind with the yellow helmet.
Movistar.
That is Movistar making the move. Now, you know, this is not going to be good for TJ Van Garderen, who just as they went through the feeding station managed to catch up to the yellow jersey group. Alberto Contador, he won the Giro d'Italia this year. He said, right, this is a day when I'm going to make them. He looks over his shoulders. I don't think he's going to go too far clear, but I think it was just an opportunity that presented itself. But I think in the next kilometre or so, he'll be back in this group. But the question to me, Phil, is has TJ Van Garderen had enough time to recover this acceleration?
And that sort of chase to bring back Contador is going to hurt TJ Van Garderen in this pack. He's only just rejoined. I would hazard a guess that will be Adriano Malori who's trying to close it down. Jens Voigt, what do you think of this move by Contador?
I absolutely love it. I mean, some of the riders going to hate it, but yeah, that was a good move by him. I mean, he's really want to do something here. And if you look behind Alberto, the group, as far as I could see, it only consists of 10 to 12, 15 riders maximum. So there's big damage done in the peloton already. You see the boys coming around the corner, and it's not too big of a group anymore. And Alberto, I think he was trying to jump across to the front group. He got teammates in that 28 rider front group. So he wanted, in the ideal scenario, wanted to bridge across on this climb, reach the top of the climb together with the front group, and they would help him to go to the finish line. But Team Movistar and Team Sky are really attentive. They wouldn't let him go like that.
Well, this is a great move by Contador, and you're right, Jens, it really has reduced the peloton. Valverde himself is causing the reaction and trying to reach his fellow Spaniard.
Yeah, but Valverde is not chasing him down. He sees this as an opportunity. Behind now, it's Team Sky are doing the pacemaking. And bear in mind, Sky, a little bit reduced in numbers because they've got two riders in the leading group themselves. They've got Richie Porte and Nicholas Roach in that leading group. But the reaction coming nice and slowly from Team Sky. They're bringing it back up to Alejandro Valverde. They're on the 6% gradient of the climb. Now all of a sudden, look at the damage that's been done. That little acceleration by Alberto Contador has put a lot of riders into difficulty. And just having a quick look here, this is the damage that's being done. I'm just having a quick look at the riders who were caught out there in that crossfire and that acceleration. I was looking to see where I could spot TJ Van Garderen. Now, Leopold Koenig is the rider on the front. Now what he'll try and do is he'll set some tempo for a little while to try and calm the spirits of the riders. He'll set a tempo that's just a little bit uncomfortable, and it discourages riders from going on the attack. Fifth round, that rider around the corner there is Nairo Quintana. TJ Van Garderen is not in this group. Just looking down, there's Robert Hessink, Bauke Mollema, Alberto Contador is in the group as well. So TJ Van Garderen, head down. Oh, this is a sign of a man who's going through one of the worst days on a bike for a guy like TJ Van Garderen. It was not good to see the body language. You can almost see the way his head is just hanging down in the middle of his shoulders. He just managed to get back. And then Alberto Contador. Contador obviously seeing it as an opportunity to try and get clear because of the fact that he's got two riders in the leading group. And this time he has no teammate waiting alongside him. So the question is, well, the fact is there's still a good, there's a good 6 kilometers to go to the top of this climb. There's a chance really for anybody here today to see the beautiful terrain with which we're moving through the Alps of the Haute-Provence, and well, this is it. This is looks very much as if TJ Van Garderen, who started the day in 3rd place overall, it looks very much as if it's the end of the Tour de France for him. Just having a quick look, that's Max Chiandri alongside him. Max got a bronze medal in the Olympic Games back in 1996 for Great Britain. Lives in Italy, and he's been a big development coach for a lot of the British cyclists who moved across to Italy. But for TJ Van Garderen, unbelievable how this man who was in third place overall this morning came out and has been confirmed as having abandoned the 2015 Tour de France. Group of the leaders, 28 riders strong. This is Voronat, number 29 now. He'll do a lot of pacemaking, I would expect, in this group. He's a long way down, more than 2 hours down, but his teammate is in the group and he's sitting a little bit further back, Thibaut Pinot. And Pinot, I think, will be hoping to do a decent ride on a day like today. He didn't ride the Critérium de Dauphiné, so he won't have ridden this route, Thibaut Pinot. He rode the Tour of Switzerland. And again, there's another little acceleration coming there from Tinkoff. And again, it's Michael Rogers. Well, these guys now, they've said, everyone has said, well, Chris Froome may well be the leader of this race overall, but we've got 4 very difficult days in the mountains. Lots of opportunities to try and see whether there is any weakness. Well, just over on the far side, there you can see Jans van Rensburg, the South African national champion. He must be feeling quite good. He's got 3 teammates in the leading group up the road, the 2 Eritreans and Mahawi Kudus. Now another move, Mick Rogers going again. Now, that's rather interesting because if Mick Rogers is going, they're actually not going to chase Mick down because he's quite a long way down in the overall standings. But what it's going to start to do, Phil, it's going to really start to set something up for Alberto Contador a little bit later on.
Everybody's come out this first day in the Alps with their own private plans, and this man is not part of them because Kwiatkowski has been dropped yet again here.
Well, the other rider who apparently was dropped, I haven't seen him in the group of the yellow jerseys, of course, Tony Galopin, number 71.
Well, the counter moves are starting from the peloton now. It looks as though we've got Aviti accelerating away from the pack. He's on Team Movistar.
Tactics are now playing on the road, Phil. We've got 4 mountain days. There are 3 riders from Movistar in the leading group of 28 riders up the road. There's another rider from Movistar going clear. There are 2 riders from Tinkoff Saxo in the leading group up the road, and now they've sent off Michael Rogers on a little sortie off the front end of the yellow jersey group. It really is as if they're trying to prepare something, to prepare a massive big attack once we come up to the summit or towards the slopes of the Col d'Alos.
Well, one thing's for sure, they have never ever accepted Chris Froome as being the lead of this tour all the way to Paris, and today they are hitting him. It might be a very good move that Chris Froome has got 2 riders in that front group who could wait for him if necessary.
Well, the funny thing, Phil, that I've always thought about Nairo Quintana coming into this last week of the Tour de France is the fact that he didn't ride the Critérium de Dauphiné, a preparation race in June, just before the start of the Tour de France. He was at home in Colombia preparing for the Tour de France, and I just think those days that he didn't have in competition, that he spent in training and preparation for the Tour de France, could pay, because it could make him that little bit stronger coming into the 3rd week of racing when other guys are starting to find a little bit of weakness.
As they come up towards the last 5 kilometres of the climb up to the summit in the peloton, the leaders are closing in on that summit now. The gap is, well, there's so many counterattacks going, it's down to 2 minutes and 56. Team Sky now, we've got another one. Probably Nicolas Ede pushing in there, or might be Daniel Navarro.
It looks like a rider from Lotto Soudal going clear. It could be Lars Bak. Lars Bak was sitting on the back of that group a little bit earlier on, and the funny thing was that one of the riders from his team, who was a rider from Lotto Soudal, going quickly out of the front there, Phil, but Tony Galopin, once they had that nasty acceleration, he quickly got left behind. Pierre Rolland is getting launched onto the attack now by his teammate from Europe.
Wow.
So they're all going for it today.
And there's still no reaction here from Chris Froome as one after another they shoot away.
Well, Froome has to be very, very careful and very attentive here. He has to keep an eye on who's making moves. Now, this is Warren Barguil coming across, the rider in the black and white jersey there of a Giant Alpecin, followed immediately by Alejandro Valverde. We're going to have a big day today. There are 4 very big days in the mountains, and every day produces a brilliant opportunity for someone to go out and try and dethrone Chris Froome. But Froome has to remain calm. After all, the yellow jersey is on his shoulders, and it's firmly on his shoulders with 3 minutes and 10 seconds. He needs to ride his own race. He needs to keep a very close eye on the riders who are challenging him. There's no more TJ Van Garderen. Van Garderen has abandoned. So Alejandro Valverde will have moved up into 3rd position. Alberto Contador up into 4th position. So there's a lot of racing still to be done. Andre Greipel struggling a little bit there, not a surprise. He's a big mountain man. He's a big sprinter and not a big mountain man. The green jersey on the shoulders of Peter Sagan, he's a lot further up the road, but these little accelerations now are getting rid of a lot of riders, and in fact Tony Galopin is a good 1.5 minutes behind the yellow jersey. Well, number 56 is a very big, powerful rider from Spain and a good climber as well, Jose Herrada. Around about a kilometre to go to the summit.
Well, if Serge Powell's managed to nip out to the King of the Mountains here, he'll climb 1 place into 5th place in the King of the Mountains competition, with plenty of mountains left to come as they start this move here now. And Jose Herrada is up there. Chris Froome still leads the King of the Mountains after that one brilliant day in the Pyrenees. Rodriguez is 2nd, Fulsang is 3rd, and Bardet is 5th. But Powell's is 6th, and he needs the first points over the top of this climb. Just in case you're a bit confused, there are 3 riders slightly ahead of 25. That is the original breakaway. There they are, heading up towards the summit. These are the chasers we're looking at here. Now there are then 3 chasers behind. Rogers, Mallory and Bart has just come on. Then we have a group Maillot Jaune, we'll call it, of Chris Froome. There's 18 riders there. They've dropped Rodriguez from that group, and they've dropped an awful lot more riders, including Galopin. They're nearly 4 minutes back of the leaders now. So once again, Paul, we're seeing a Tour de France completely explode on these climbs.
And what it's showing is nobody really has got complete control of the main field, although I do have to say that as we go over the top, you see it was Powell's got himself the points as he went over the top of that climb, and that's what he was looking for. The other rider who went close was Jose Herrada, and then in 3rd place was third place going over the top was in fact
Michael Rogers?
No, it was Durasek, sorry. Yeah.
So we'll just have a look at these as they continue here. They're breaking up all of the time now. And Powell's at the front has got the points there, which will move him 1 place up in the King of the Mountains competition. Very, very hot again today, but there are... And this forecast, it can be taken every day while we stay in the Alps. Rain likely after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, so far it's wrong. It's 20 past 3 here. But by 5 o'clock, the last 2 days we've been in the Alps, it has rained torrentially. So we'll see.
Right, well, new situation now as Romain Sicard and Bryce Ferlu join the 3 riders who are just ahead of the yellow jersey group, and the yellow jersey group now is 3 minutes and 11 seconds behind the front of the race. It was Durasek who got himself in 3rd place over the top of that climb. Well, now here's a little bit of order appearing at the front end of the main field. Thomas de Gent is the rider in the red and white jersey of Lotto. And this is the group of Tony Galopin. I'm just looking if I can spot Tony Galopin, but he obviously is having a very difficult day. There's Luke Durbridge going through, Cyril Gauthier, the sprinter. Back at the faces of all these riders now, they're pretty much in survival mode on what is going to be a very difficult day. Andre Greipel going through. They are saying that in that group of Andre Greipel there is his teammate, and that of course Tony Galopin started the day in 11th place in the overall standings, and he is around about a minute behind the yellow jersey group. But these riders are doing a pretty impressive job now, because this is the well, it's the 3rd group on the road. You've got the 3 leaders being chased by 25, and then these 5 riders now who are in fact doing 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So Bryce Ferlu has got himself into this group with Jan Barter, and Romain Sicard is the other rider to make the junction there. They're at 2:20 to the yellow, to the front of the race, and the yellow jersey group is just a little bit further back. There's so much going on in the race here this afternoon. In the back group, as we have a look, you see everybody's stretched straight out across the line. I think Chris Froome and his team just paying attention to who's attacking. Now this is an acceleration to the front, and that's Thomas Voeckler trying to make the move. And it's Ian Stannard. No, he's not making a move there. He's just accelerating because he's seen somebody that he knows a bit further up the road and wants to take on board another bottle. Team car, the Bora team car, stopping there. Everybody realizes it's a very hot day, and just looking up to the skies, the clouds are starting to build. There was a massive big thunderstorm in the latter part of the afternoon. The race organisers are a little bit concerned that the same thing transpires this afternoon, because the descent away from the Col de Los is very, very tricky, with lots of repairs and lots of different kinds of tarmac on the surface, where it's been patched here and there, making it quite difficult if it does start to get wet.
.333 the gap, 61 kilometres to the finish. We're looking at the order of the passage over the top of the Col Saint-Michel. It was Powell, Serge Powell's of MTN Quebec, followed by the man in our picture at the moment, Jose Herrada. Then Jurasek and Degenkolb, as Paul said, got some points in the King of the Mountains competition. Not bad for the sprinter in 4th place.
But more importantly for those riders at the front, Phil, they will pay a lot of attention now to the fact that looming up on the horizon is the intermediate sprint point, and that group now chasing away from the yellow jersey group of Rogers, Mallory, Barta and Bryce Felu. They are only 2 minutes and 20 seconds behind the leading group of riders, and they're about a minute in front of the yellow jersey group. So tactics are starting to be rather complicated for Team Sky. I suppose the big advantage Team Sky's got, Phil, is they've got in that leading group of riders on the road Richie Porte and Nicholas Roach.
Well, they can come back, but they can't turn around and ride back. They can only slow down and wait. There's no riding against the race in the Tour de France. Jose Herrada we're looking at now, trying to tempt everybody to chase him down towards that village of Beauvezer, and that's at 50 kilometres to go when they contest that sprint. Well, you could have got good odds this morning if before the start you'd said there's no way Peter Sagan would be in with the hunt of winning that sprint, not after all the climbs of the day, but he is.
Well, he is, and he just wants to keep chipping away and laying down the foundations in a victory. And let's not forget, Phil, he's won that green jersey points competition for the last 3 years, and the points were a little bit changed to advantage the sprinters like Greipel and Cavendish, and maybe the French sprinters Bouhanni, but in fact it seems to be still turning to the advantage of Peter Sagan. There he is, just popping around there, and because John Degenkolb went to the front to get himself some points in 4th position over the Col de Saint-Michel, I think you can see there that Peter Sagan has been very attentive and come straight across.
Absolutely, and because he says, I'm not going to do all this hard work and not get a shot at first place at the green jersey sprint. He's making the jersey his own. He's done it the hard way. He's won it for the last 3 years. But the way he's riding, it's prompted his team manager, owner, Oleg Tinkoff, to say Peter Sagan is the best bike rider in the race. I suppose, as an entertainer and a real strong man, he probably is.
Well, funnily enough, somebody sent me a message over the weekend and said, well, maybe we should forget about the Tour de France on time. We'll start scoring it the same way as they do in Formula One. If we went to Formula One, well, Peter Sagan, if we went to a Formula One type scoring situation, Peter Sagan would certainly be in the lead.
Absolutely. A bit dizzy down that right-hand bend there.
Yeah, this is over the top of the Col de Saint-Michel, and this is the descent, and gives you a little bit of an hors d'oeuvre as to what the descent is going to be like away from the Col de Los, because again that too is also a very narrow and technical descent. It's a descent that saw, as we raced here in the Critérium de Dauphiné in the month of June, Romain Bardet in fact attacked on the descent and built himself up a 1 minute advantage before the final climb up to the finish. It's actually not that long of a climb at the final climb of the day. It's only about 6 kilometers long and about 4 miles, but it's the climb before that everyone's concerned about, the Col d'Alos, which is 14 kilometers long and climbs up to the highest spot of this year's Tour de France at 2,200 meters. This is Andrew Talansky, the American, who in the past has finished in 10th place overall in the Tour, and this year he had a pretty tough start to the Tour, and he's now trying to ride himself back in, and moves like this. I mean, if he could gain 4 or 5 minutes on a day like this, that would put him a little bit closer to a top 15 position. Then if he was to gain 4 or 5 minutes on another stage, he could start to be looking at the possibility of another top 10 finish. This is John Degenkolb, followed by Talansky, followed by Sagan. A little bit further back there, followed by Herrada. And as I said, Lamprey One has to wonder just what they're going to do, because they've got 3 riders in the leading group. This is the next group on the road with 5 riders chasing. They've got another rider in this group, and that's Adriano Malori, the Italian national time trial champion. Bryce Fellou is there as well. All these corners are very, very tricky, and it's Michael Rogers doing most of the pacemaking.
We're joined by Charlie Wigalis from the Kendall Garmin team. Charlie, a good situation for you with 2 of your key riders in the leading group.
Yes, both Ryder and Andrew, along with Dan Martin, worked very hard to make their way into that group, and we're pleased how that worked out, and now we're going to go towards the final and see what we can make of it.
It's going to be really difficult for the break to survive with all the action that we've seen from the group containing the yellow jersey. What do you think is going to happen at the back of the race?
Yeah, I think it's fairly clear at the moment that Tinkoff and Movistar are trying to set up a hard race to try and put Chris Froome in difficulty. Unfortunately for teams like ours who aren't directly involved in that, that's slightly out of our hands. So the best we can do is just continue with our race and hope that they cancel one another out.
Well, it is very difficult to keep everybody in touch of where everybody is just now. They're split up all over the place, but we do have this front group of 28. They are chased by a small group of 5. Michael Rogers part of that group at 2:27, and then we see behind that the yellow jersey group at around 3:49, and off the back people like Jean-Christophe Perrault and Tony Galopin. They've lost now 4:57 on the front. They are the primary contenders. There are people behind those who will be battling today and be very concerned about losing time and being eliminated from the Tour. 3:50 the gap now, 55 kilometres, not too far to race, but they've got to climb the Col d'Alos, descend a very tricky mountain, and then climb up to the finish at Pralou.
Well, it's going to be very, very complicated, Phil, because as I said, in that leading group of riders, you've got 3 riders from Movistar. Now they're moving another rider up towards the front in the chasing group of 5 with Michael Rogers, and that is Adriano Malori, a very good time trialist. This group, well, they've spread out a fraction now. They've shut off the pacemaker, and I think that's because they all know what's happening. And the riders, you can see the Movistar riders there. They're what's happening behind them, and I think we're getting to the strategic point. Once we go through the sprint point, which is looming on the horizon, Peter Sagan will be saying, right, I'll have the points here, thank you very much, chaps, I'm trying to get as many points as possible. But then I think we'll start to see a complete change as the guys trying to win the race overall will start to eat into that advantage.
Well, once we're into the sprint point at Beauvazer, that being contested, it's more or less just after that we'll see the sign which will tell them it's 22 kilometres to climb the Col d'Alos, which is the highest point in this year's Tour de France at 2,250 metres, and it's 14 kilometres long, and we top out, sorry, it's 14 kilometres long the climb. We top out with just 22 kilometres left to race. Now back to the main field here. Chris Froome has got his black guard all around him, keeping him safe, checking the whereabouts of Contador. He's had one little dig today, and in the end it served to launch his team captain Michael Rogers into that group of 5.
Yeah, and I think that's why Michael Rogers probably had a quick chat with Alberto Contador. Contador said, let's stick to the plan and let's keep pushing riders up ahead on the road, and there's a good chance here to see Michael Rogers. They're at 2.5 minutes now, Phil, to the leading group of 28 riders. But more importantly, in this group, you've got a Movistar rider, and you've got Michael Rogers. Again, all thinking about trying to put the attacks in onto Chris Froome on the final climb of the day. Just making a bit of a recovery on the descent down into this valley here is Tony Galopin. And like a lot of other riders, Phil, having a very difficult day today. One of the prettiest routes, and I tell you what, that group of 5 riders doing a pretty impressive job. They're now down to 1 minute and 44 seconds, and I'm sure that's a lot to do with the power of Michael Rogers and Adriano Malori.
Well, these boys, Ian Stannard on the front, I've shut down once again here. They're waiting for the next assault, which will come on the Col d'Alos. It's a sort of false, very uneasy truce. 500 metres to go for the sprinters, and I think pretty soon after the sprint we might well see Rogers, Malori, Sicard, Barta and Fellou catch up to this group. Some big names there, and watch out for Michael Rogers on the climb too. Tekla Haim not there, just sharing with Kudos, his teammate, the youngest rider in the race, by the way, Mawari Kudos, number 216. 300 metres to go. Will this sprint ever begin? I think Degenkolb is going to have to go for it because he's up there in the competition. But he's not going to catch Peter Sagan. He's looking where he is. Sagan is right behind him. 200 meters to go. When are you going to make your move?
Well,
100 meters, and there he goes. I thought you'd never come and challenge me. Sagan didn't get that.
well, he didn't. In fact, going to the photo finish, I think we'd better give that to Voronan. He can put that down as one of his best ever sprints, beating John Degenkolb and Peter Sagan to the line. Sagan won't be too worried, Phil, about that because, I mean, when you look at the points, he had 405 at the start of the day. Almost 100 points, far more than Andre Greipel. And so today he probably would have picked himself up 17 or 15 points there. So he'll be pretty happy with that. The main field now are starting to get themselves a little bit more organised, but it's actually, again, it will have changed quite dramatically, I think, against Team Sky, because now all of a sudden, I think in the next few kilometres, we'll have 4 riders from Movistar in the leading group and 3 riders from Tinkoff in the leading group, and that's going to set up for some serious attacking coming on the Col d'Alos, because Nairo Quintana said he's got nothing to lose. He's finished in second place overall in the Tour de France before, and he will attack all the way to Paris.
And here is that chasing group right ahead the banner. We've seen the front breakaway go through. These are the next 5 riders on the road. This is also a great move for the rider from Canberra in Australia, Michael Rogers, who attacked to try and lead Contador on the move, and in the end has gone on by himself. And now looks like they might well contact that front group. And Rogers won his stage in the Tour de France last year, and that was a big moment for him.
Phil, I'm just getting, as we look at the group coming across here, I'm just getting information that Sam Bennett has actually abandoned the Tour today as well. As we know, this is a group there with, this is the leading group. Again, starting to split up. You see the rest of the group just going around the corner. It looks as if Ryder Hezerdahl had been caught out just a fraction there as well. It's nice to see that Daniel Tekla-Heimenot had got himself off in the chase just behind Simon Geschke. But it is going to be a pretty complicated race here this afternoon. In fact, the 2 riders from Sky are in the second part of this group now. I wonder if they've been given the nod from the team management, Phil, that they need to sit back up now and wait. And as you can see, they're looking over their shoulders here. That's Nicholas Roach, that's Richie Porte. And I don't think they will try too hard to try and stay in contact with the front of the race, because those 2 riders, in their minds, they've just got one job today, and that's to look after Chris Froome.
Well, at the moment they're back half of the split. They don't want to give away all the energy either. This reaction has been caused by the attack of Simon Geschke. And Thibaut Pinot here, he said, because he's lost any hope of getting on the podium again this year in the Tour de France, he wants a stage win in the Alps. He's looking for it. Looks like he's going to shut this one down too.
Well, he's trying to get across. This took a long time for this group to form here. It looks like Yates is coming across there as well, number 108. Thibaut Pinot is the rider in the red, white and blue jersey of FDJ. Daniel Tekla-Heimenot saw the move. He went into it, but riding across the other Eritrean in the race. Amazing to think, Phil, there's only 2 Eritreans in the race here, and they're both in the action this afternoon.
Yes, and this is Mahawi Kudos. He's also the youngest rider in this race. And they're repairing the damage. We've still got the Sky Boys just behind our camera there. There's the mountains, only one way out of this valley now. And as far as the race is concerned, it's over the climb of the Col d'Alos.
Well, it's absolutely splitting apart that group, which was it was too big a group, I thought, Phil, to remain cohesive all the way down to the end. And this is a long climb that they haven't actually started the climb, the categorized part of the climb. It doesn't start until 14 kilometers to go to the summit, but they're now in the long valley road to come into the town of Alos, which is where the, if you like to say, the start of the climb proper comes.
Well, Simon Geschke, who is 29 years of age here. Not a big race win. He's only won 2 races in his life. He turned pro back in 2009, but he is a very aggressive bike rider. And just seeing how this one pans out, I would suggest. He's not a great climber, and some of the guys in that front group are. So he needs a bit of a lead for the climb of the Col d'Alos.
He certainly does. It's a very long climb. As I say, it's categorized at 14 kilometers. We're now heading into the small town of Colmar-les-Alpes.
It's quite nice, actually.
Beautiful. In fact, it's a town that dates back to the Middle Ages, when it was a very prosperous part of the area. in the high valley just above the Verdon. But it wasn't really developed to the town that you see now until the 19th century.
Well, in the old days, it was a border city going back to the 14th century when Alos, which is where we're going, and Barcelonnette were part of the Savoie region.
You just spot on the top there, you might just have spotted the Fort de France, which is a fortified building which was built in 1639.
Now, Ian Stannard assuming the position at the front here. They're dropping away to 7 minutes this gap now. So we're developing 2 races once again in the Tour de France, as the leaders might well contest the result on the line. But we've seen, as we saw the other day, the battle in the race for the podium in Paris has been pretty spectacular in the last hour of the day, and there's every reason to expect that's what's going to happen again today.
Well, Geske, we talked about this guy in the breakaway on the early days of the Tour de France. He's been a professional since 2009. He comes from a very long line of cycling family. His dad, a multi-champion on the track for East Germany, a very good sprinter. In fact, he was world champion on the tandem sprint. Geske himself has only won 2 races as far as I can remember. One of those, Phil, was a stage of the Criterium International, which was a pretty difficult stage because it was the hilly stage. So the rest of his career he's really spent working for the team, and working most of the time for John Degenkolb. And he's got a good advantage now as he gets into a good rhythm. He's 1 minute and 6 seconds ahead of the Peter Sagan group, which has been seriously reduced in numbers now, and it would appear that Roach and Port are not chasing the group at all. They're in fact riding together, waiting, I think, for the yellow jersey group to come back to them.
Common sense riding by those 2 very strong participants on the Sky team when Froome needs help. So they're putting themselves, just like a game of chess, into a strategic position, and we'll see what happens when Froome's group comes up, if indeed it does. At the moment, trailing by 7 minutes, probably on the Port and Nicholas Roach group. That's Talansky with his hand up there. He wants a drink. Number 8 is number 6 rather is Tanel Kangat, who is on Astana, the only Astana rider in the breakaway now.
Well, 161 is a rider who was looking to lead Team Cannondale-Garmin in this year's Tour de France, and he's having a little bit of difficulty. Nice chance there to see as well that fort you can just see there, in fact, is the Fort de Dessau, which was built by Saint Martin of Savoie. And again, it's magnificently fortified. It was reinforced in the 19th century, and in fact access was through a drawbridge. It's a strange shape, a trapezium striped shape, and half of it is buried underground.
Well, from that angle I think the access will be with a chain and crampons, but there must be a gate on the other side. As we're watching the peloton here, our Peter Sagan starting to pick the pace up again. Gentle breeze today. The wind isn't a factor in the race today, by the way, and it's beautiful and warm. But there's still reports that we could be in a storm by the end of the day, and it does change quickly.
It does. In fact, it was around about 3:30 yesterday afternoon that the storm clouds came in, a huge thunderstorm which brought in a massive rainstorm as well, and that in fact could be rather precarious on the run down towards the finish, and I'm sure that the race organisation have got their fingers crossed, hoping that's not going to be the case this afternoon. Heyjedal. This is the second split here, because there is Richie Port, number 35. Richie Port's lost a lot of time. Well, in fact, it was they're actually coming back. I thought they'd waited, but now Nicholas Roach and Richie Port have managed to come back to rejoin this group. 2 extremely good climbers today, given a bit of a free hand. They will not have collaborated very much with this breakaway group, because their job on the day would be to look after Chris Froome. But tactically, I think once they saw the 3 riders moving forward from Team Movistar and the 2 riders from Team Tinkoff, they figured that the best part of Valor was to have a couple of riders in a break, especially when you get a breakaway group which was 28 riders at the start. It took a long time to form.
Paul has said, and it's only for one reason. They are going to attack each other on the climb of the Col d'Alos.
Yes, but it's a very strange situation at the front with the lone leader, Geschke, now got a couple of riders chasing him, but even the group of Peter Sagan is losing a fair chunk of time to Simon Geschke. He's almost got himself a 2-minute advantage over the chasers. It's 1:45 to be exact, but he's riding at a very, very good tempo and doesn't look like a man who's going to weaken. The big advantage he's got, Phil, although he doesn't have a reputation as a climber, is this is a very, very steady climb. With the gradient is not very much more than 6 or 7%, but the average gradient is 5.5. It's going to take him a long time, though, to get to the top.
And it's only categorised one rather than outside category, which is the very steep climbs, for example, like Alpe d'Huez. This is only a first category climb here.
John Degenkolb, but before we really start, the steep part of the slopes are starting to slip away. His job done. He can take an easier ride now. But it's interesting to see that the two Sky riders managed to come back into this group when they were split off a little while back, Phil. I thought they would disappear.
He's just gone past the 14-kilometre to go banner to the summit of the Col de Los. This is Geschke. He's first onto the slopes of the climb. And 14 kilometres to the summit, and then what is a very tricky technical descent. And he's given himself a little bit of a start, according to the computer, about 1:38 of the pursuers. We think Daniel Tekle-Heimanot is on his own just behind Geschke, but we've got no time on him. And we haven't seen too much of him, if anything at all, actually. Now we'll see this peloton, I think, once they get onto the slopes of that climb, also be in trouble.
Well, Daniel Tekle-Heimanot, Phil, I think is with two other riders, Jose Herrada and Durasek, the Lampre rider. They're at around about 30 seconds, but it's 1:40 seconds back to the rest of the group. So back with the leader. And in fact, there's a big acceleration coming in the green jersey group because they've reduced that gap to 1:15 with 3 survivors in between Geschke at the front. Tekle-Heimanot, well, there's confirmation. Tekle-Heimanot is at 1:06 seconds, and he's got 2 riders with him, Durasek and Herrada. Peter Sagan is in the next group at 1:25, so they can probably see the group of 3 riders just ahead of them. And the yellow jersey group of Chris Froome and all of the other pre-race favourites are at 8 minutes and 50 seconds. So they're an awful long way back, leaving themselves a lot of work to do on this stage if they go.
Mikhail Kwiatkowski, the world champion, as he's just been announced, has abandoned the Tour as well. The world champion, he's been not very good the last week. He's been at the back of the race, and he's gone too. That's our 6th rider today on this stage of the Tour de France. Laurent Didier didn't start the race, and 5 have given up.
Yes, and lots of rumours swirling around about where he is going to ride for next season, because in fact it's been announced that he will not be continuing with Team Etixx Quick-Step for the 2016 season. Lots of rumours. You know, the Tour de France in July is always the big rumour mill when lots of discussions happen and riders are starting to prepare their renewal of their contracts with the same team, or looking for a different venue for the following season. And it's a race where all of the big top team managers are brought together. So there's lots of little movement around the corridors of hotel rooms at night.
Well, Kwiatkowski in his first Tour de France finished 11th and wore the white jersey for 6 days, 10 days in total in that race, Paul. And it's his 3rd attempt at the Tour now. First time he has abandoned the race.
Well, one of the big rumours circulating, Phil, and of course these are all rumours until we get to the month of August and September, is that he may well be moving to Team Sky to replace Richie Porte as support for Chris Froome in the big mountains. This is a great move again by MTN Qhubeka, the African team. This man hails from Eritrea. He's a star in his own country, Daniel Tekle-Heimanot, and he has seen this as an opportunity to try and jump across the gap and get to Simon Geschke. But you know, the main group behind, they are really getting sorted out, and it's not the 28 men that started the breakaway today.
No, Tekle-Heimanot here, a member of MTN Qhubeka, which is now one of only 3 teams left in the Tour de France with all 9 starters. They came here to learn the business, and they're actually showing others the way home.
Joined by Jens Zemke from the MTN Qhubeka team. Jens, you've had a great tour so far, but how pleased are you to see Mohawi Kudus, the youngest rider in the race, in the lead group?
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. So we saved him for 2 weeks. we picked 1 or 2 stages for him, so that was from the beginning the plan. He was always hiding. Now to have him in a group of nearly all good riders, that's fantastic. But we have also a bad situation at the moment with Luis Meintjes, who has big problems with the stomach, so he is in the last group.
So it's the top and the tail of the race, and but also with Daniel Tekle-Harmanot now trying to go across to the very front with Simon Geschke. You're on the move.
Yeah, that's also fantastic. And I mean, these are rookies of the Tour de France. They are the first time in this race. To see them performing so well, that it's a pleasure for us as well.
So Tekle-Harmanot has now been caught, and now starting to move over the top of Daniel Tekle-Harmanot is the rider who got into this group from Team Lotto Jumbo. That's Kruijswijk. And now again, knows a nice little move here coming from Yates, and this is in fact Adam Yates. His brother finished 6th on this stage of the Criterium du Dauphiné. I know you don't want to say that the Criterium du Dauphiné is the same as the Tour de France, but it's always good to have been here before to give you a little bit of an idea of how the race and how the stage is going to unfold.
Looking at Richie Porte here at the moment as he starts the climb, as pressures again are being put on, and that is Adam Yates there in 2nd place here. Now they've just picked up Daniel Tekle-Harmanot. We still have Simon Geschke in the lead, and this is Stefan Kruijswijk here, who's also starting to get stronger. He's another first time in the Tour.
Yes, just having a look now as they make their way through the small town of Foudalos. And this is where the ski station is here. It was a ski station established in the 1930s in what was originally a tiny little village. And there's plenty of ski slopes. There are 78 ski slopes in here. And just seeing Richie Porte there, Phil, slipping away, I didn't think he was under pressure. I think he was just waiting for the main field behind, because he knows that the attacks, as far as I'm concerned, there's an attack coming here at the front of the group, but I have a funny feeling that the attacks behind will start to come on the final climb of the day.
Well, this should be Matthias Frank who's putting a move here. He's the best placed man in this breakaway, and this could be a great move because he's the one man gaining time. Not enough to overtake anybody in the race lead, but he certainly would take a leg up the overall situation.
Yeah, well, on today's stage, Phil, he could see himself popping into the top 10 in the overall standings, because he started the day 14 minutes down, and that puts him 3 minutes away from a top 10 place, and that's what he's thinking about on the move this afternoon. But more importantly, he's thinking about trying to get himself a stage victory, and this is a guy who in previous years was a very strong ally in the BMC squad, and he decided he wanted to come out of BMC and have the responsibility as riding as a leader on his own account. He's followed there by Rafael Majka.
Yes, a teammate last year of TJ Van Garderen, who is now out of the Tour today, the American. When he was in 3rd place overall, he retired. That's Rafael Majka has come up behind him. Good reaction. Majka still hasn't given up hope here of defending his King of the Mountains competition. He's still up there in the overall standings. And so he's just needs a good day in these mountains, and he could be right up amongst it again.
Well, the other rider who made the... Well, a different team coming forward now as we start to see the Trek Factory Racing team come up to the front, and maybe they're thinking about placing... You can in fact see in 3rd position there is Arredondo, the Colombian climber on their squad. Obviously, the Colombians now starting to move into a terrain that they really like.
That acceleration has hurt the peloton there, and they're thinking to try and move up Bauke Mollema. That's why they've started the action back there. Mollema's been riding extremely well. This is Thibaut Pinot at the front with the MTN Quebecer boys just behind, and they're revving it up again as well here, as Kudos is the man, the youngest man in the race, is trying to counter the move of Matthias Frank.
Yeah, but Matthias Frank is leaving himself an awful lot of work to do, Phil. He's got to bridge around about the 2-minute gap. Talansky riding at his own pace. You can see he's using a pretty large gear there as Pinot comes around the corner, and Pinot is thinking about the descent which lies ahead, and it's Kudus once again has seen the back wheel of Thibaut Pinot. Just 21 years of age, that rider there, Phil. He's ridden a Grand Tour before. He rode the Vuelta a España. I thought it was a bit of a tough call to bring him to the Tour de France, as Ian Stannard, well, number 38, job done for the day, but what a job of work he's done.
He's back
so
in the
much.
peloton, of course. Yeah.
He's done so much pacemaking throughout the whole of this Tour de France.
That's just what he expected today, but here's the interest now. The fourth rider in white is Bauke Mollema. He's the team leader. He's still right up there in the overall positions. He's in 9th place in this race, and he's decided to see what materialises from this now.
Well, Pinot has made the junction there to Kruijswijk and Yates. That's Adam Yates and Talansky just about holding on to the back of that group. But look at the pedalling style here of Thibaut Pinot. He's a great rider, Phil. He's been a bit enigmatic in the early part, but if he can ride consistently, he could be the next man for France to get a victory in the Tour.
Well, we'd all love to see a French win in the Tour de France. They've waited an awful long time. The last winner was Bernard Hinault in 1985. Last year they got second and third. He was third. His one big failing is he gets to the top and he's about to go down one of the worst descents in the Tour de France, and he can't descend.
Well, that's unfortunate, and you know, he did spend a lot of time and money trying to improve his downhill ability. In fact, he spent a lot of that time racing on motor racing circuits to learn how to go round the corners, and he has improved dramatically. And I think he's one of those guys, Phil, is probably looking up at the skies right now to say, hopefully this rain is not going to come down.
I bet he is. 25 kilometres to go for Simon Geschke. Got away on the lower slopes of the Col d'Alos, and we top out in another 3 kilometres time, and then we start the descent before the climb to the finishing line in Pralou. It's a bit barren up here, isn't it? Nothing grows because it's not long before it'll be covered in snow again. But the clouds are telling us, let's hope we can get on the way up rather than the way down before the rain finally comes.
Well, Thibaut Pinot is now leaving himself an awful lot to do. He's put time between himself and anybody else, but he's going to have to do probably one of the descents of his life, Phil. He's still got 1 minute and 42 seconds to make on the lone leader, and he's leaving himself a few kilometres on the slopes of this climb to do that. Look at that, he's accelerating again.
And he's accelerated away, but Frank has kicked again and said, hang on, I'm still good enough to hang on to you. Yates is in the backdrop there. Talansky's the lime green colours. Bauke Mollema, they're trying to hold this man under control. They also know he's not very good going downhill. That's why he needs the gap on the way up.
Well, Pinot's a long way down. You know, he's lost half an hour in the race, and just look at that. Talansky came back there, Phil, to say, oh, that was pretty hard, that acceleration. Bauke Mollema there is in 4th position. You can see him. They're also trying to move up Pierre Rolland, the Frenchman. I'm not sure why they're trying to move him up now, because they're an awful long way down for the stage victory this afternoon. But certainly they want to position, if they can, Rolland 15th overall. He's the 3rd best place Frenchman in this race. He may well be 4th best at the end of the day, because I think Tony Galopin is going to slip away at the end of today's stage.
Well, he's already gone from the peloton again, and I don't think anybody dropped now will come back before the finish. There's some serious pacemaking being put on here, and Chris Froome's team happy to let the Trek Factory Racing team do all of the work. They are trying to put Bauke Mollema into a springboard situation. Gap 11:14.
Well, 1 minute and
ahead, because that's where they're going and that's where the storm is, and it could be on the last climb of the day.
Well, Fulsang is the rider on the front. Scarpone is 2nd position. Then it's Vincenzo Nibali. Chris Froome is there, as we mentioned a little bit earlier on. He's slightly isolated by the other guys with him.
Well, you can see in the far distance, you can't actually see Geschke. He's around that top corner, but the French spectators are going to try and will this man on to catch him. He won't catch him before the top, but he's put him in a difficult decision now. He's going to have to take a few risks on the descent, and Thibaut Pinot admits it's his weakest part of his cycling career.
Well, this is the next group on the road. Just looking down from altitude here, you can see the rider on the front there is Matthias Frank. Behind him is Talansky, Kruijswijk. Then it's Adam Yates. But there's about 1 minute and 10 seconds separating the first 2 riders on the road. It's going to be a daredevil descent by both of these riders, and then it'll be a pursuit up towards the finish line.
And there's huge crowds on the climb up to Pralou. Only the 3rd time in the Tour history that we finished up here. A little bit of a problem here. Pierre Rolland is being dropped as well now, because it's become a much more serious race for yellow as the favourites start to ride at each other.
Well, just having a quick look, all of the big names were in that group, Phil. I noticed Alejandro Valverde. This man now is the man who leads. He's not too far from the top of the climb, and he's going to feel rather exhilarated by the fact he will go over the top in the lead.
Last 100 metres to the summit, a great ride from the bottom to the top for Simon Geschke. That's a superb result for him. Now he knows he's just got to get down this hill as fast as he can, and then he's got the climb up to the finish at Pralou.
This man, Phil, now has got to take all kinds of risks on what is a very tricky and technical descent, and I have to say, as we look down at the black clouds in the distance, there is no safety net on this descent.
The last two nights, this is what we've seen. It goes darker and darker, and then it comes over the mountains, thunders and lightens.
Yeah, but fortunately, Phil, for the moment, it's still dry.
Let's hope it stays that way until they get on the climb. They won't mind the rain then when they're on the climb. Now, Thibaut Pinot, he's got to do the ride of his life downhill. It's not his strongest point, but he's made the move he's promised all the Frenchie would do. He's attacked in the Alps.
Well, he didn't ride the Criterium de Dauphiné this year, so he will not have ridden this exact stage like many of the other riders in here, but I'm sure he's been to look at this climb as he crests the summit there, and he's 57 seconds I made it over the top there. He's going to have a real hard time bridging that on the descent, but he'll have to take some. Bauke Mollema is in difficulty. Well, there's a surprise.
The whole reason his team were working was to put him in a place to attack, and he's been dropped here, and his teammate Bob Jungels has had to go back and try and nurse him along. Look at the group down there now, Paul. We've got Vincenzo Nibali, second, last year's winner. Chris Froome. You've got the white jersey of Nairo Quintana. Contador fidgeting around in his back pocket there. The men that matter now, remember today, and sadly, out of the race has gone the third place overall, TJ Van Garderen. So they're now looking as the heads of state get themselves together towards the summit here. Oh, Chris Froome now, and Nibali has been coming back into form in this last 10 days.
Yeah, but Phil, this move has been made by Team Astana, not for an attack on the climb, but I think an attack on the descent for Vincenzo Nibali. Look at the face. You know, this is a face that gives nothing at all away. You never know if he's riding well or badly. He just has the same expression there all the time, but he is a champion. He's the champion of Italy on the road, and I just have a feeling that today, for a question of pride, he will try and make a move on the descent. He's 8th place overall at the start of the day, and a minute gained here could move him up into 7th place overall.
And remember, 3rd place is now vacant with the abandonment of Van Garderen. The man most likely to accept is Valverde, and this is Warren Barguil also going off.
Well, also slipping back there as well as the Olympic champion from Beijing, Sammy Sanchez. He's going to be the #1 man for Team BMC now, with the abandon of TJ Van Garderen today. But also slipping away the Sky Rider is Wout Poels. So the only man left is Geraint Thomas.
Looking at a very select group of riders now, as one by one the other big names are peeled off here. The only man left alongside Chris Froome is Geraint Thomas. He's got himself a new pair of white sunglasses after that crash 2 days ago when he lost them. As we're now looking at Nibali, what do you think Nibali is going to plan here, Jens?
Well, the plan seems to be really clear. He wants to reduce that front group, and I mean, this is a very, very select group now in the front. There's like only the creme de la creme left in there. And to see, or just to make you see how hard this race has been, all these riders have been so salt covered with white salt on their jerseys. You see Warren Barguil being desperate for water. He pointed out to the neutral service he wants water. He's all covered in salt. So it has been a really hard day for them so far, and sure, Nibali wants to let an attack go on a descent.
Well, we're watching Thibaut Pinot fly down, and this is the man we know can't descend very well, but let's keep an eye on him here as he races down behind the leader Geschke.
Well, Phil, he's actually losing time to Geschke. He went over the top of the climb at 57 seconds. He's now at 1:08, and as we said, it's not a shame to be not a great descender if you're a brilliant climber like this man, but it is a shame to be able to gain time going uphill and then lose it on the downhill part of the course.
Geschke knows he needs more than a minute on the climb to the finish to hold Pinot off, I think.
Yeah, well, Geschke He himself has been a very good rider in the early part of his career in the longer climbs, but here he's proving that to be a great time trialist because he's ridden on his own for the majority of the day. This back now is second position on the road. You see, he just doesn't seem to... Oh, he's gone down! And they just did not seem to be very comfortable going into that corner. We had said that he wasn't a great climber, a great descender, and it's just, he just locked up there on the very smooth... The road has been resurfaced here, and all of a sudden just a little bit too much of an application of the brakes, and it slipped away. He doesn't seem to be damaged too much. He doesn't seem to be injured, but that will really start to scare him. This is a guy who actually started driving around motor racing circuits in a car to try and figure out how he could get around the corners and improve his downhill abilities. Oh, look at that again. Oh, even the second time in the replay, it makes your heart jump. So now the next time we get a time check, it's going to have stretched out. He probably lost himself about 15 seconds there, but what he will also lose a little bit is the nerve that you need to throw your bike round these corners at high speed. Now this is it, this is the move that we're expecting. Scarponi on the front here with Nibali in second place, and they're now starting to put, well, Walter Pools at the back there, number 34. He's dragged himself back into this group because he realizes that Chris Froome has got to have somebody. Nibali is going up towards the top. He is attacking now with the pride of the champion of Italy on his shoulders, and Chris Froome has been forced to respond. He cannot respond to this move by Vincenzo Nibali, but he doesn't need to. Nibali's a long way behind. In his wheel though, you've got Quintana, you've got Contador, you've got Alejandro Valverde. Let's have a look at it one more time. Well, this is the move that we were expecting. There's not many men left in this group.
Well, that is it now, Paul. Everybody has gone fighting for the vacancy created by TJ Van Garderen, Valverde, Contador, Quintana in second, Froome, all there.
Well, Vincenzo Nibali has looked over his shoulder, Phil. He's also got rid of Geraint Thomas and Robert Hessink, who were the riders who were preceding him in the overall standings at the start of the day. You know, they call him the Shark of Messina. That's his nickname. He's an unbelievable bike rider, the winner of the Tour de France last year. He might have had a difficult start to the Tour, but you know the way he races like a true champion.
He had a terrible journey through the Pyrenees, but he's shown us he was coming back in those transitional stages across the heat of the south of France, and now he's in a position to ride. He looks at this moment in time to be the strongest rider in the Tour de France.
I'm not at all surprised to see that move there coming from Vincenzo Nibali, Phil, but watch out once we get to the descent, because he will make a move on the descent, I'm sure. He's an unbelievable downhill tactician.
They're still going up the Col d'Alos. Remember, the leaders, the original breakaway, they're on the way down. We're picking up the leader here, Simon Geschke. It's quite a long descent before they start the climb. It remains technical, and I am hearing on my earphones that Quintana is attacked, and there he is. He's also having a dig now. Froome has had to get over the top of Vincenzo Nibali and chase another one. We're being treated now to what we saw the other day in the Pyrenees, Paul. One by one, they're attacking Froome.
And we're getting up now to the rarefied air. Let's not forget, this is the highest point of the Tour de France this year, 2,200 metres in altitude, but Froome has slowly responded. And there's Richie Porte. Richie Porte was in the leading group today. He has sat up from the leading group because he needed to have another man with Team Sky on the run-in down towards the finish.
Look, he's looking at Chris Froome, he's checking him out, he's going back to the front. This is what he was done. That's why they put him up front, bring him back, calm the situation down when all that's left are the future winners of the Tour de France, and it's worked for the moment.
Well, Phil, you have to remember Richie Porte is leaving Team Sky at the end of this year. We have a rough idea where he might be going, but at the end of the day, he's still a big mate of Chris Froome's.
Well, he's already said that he will leave the side of Froome, but Froome, he leaves on good terms. And he's making that obvious right now.
Roach is still ahead of Chris Froome on the road.
Absolutely right. So the gap has come down to 9 minutes
Talansky now, I think, has just come back. It was a little bit blurry going through there, but I think he's just come back to the back wheel there of Thibaut Pinot. And look at the clouds in the background. That's an angry sky.
Well, let's hope they stay in the background. They're in the right place right now, because we're racing towards Pralou, and at the moment at the finish line it still looks okay. 9:15 the gap.
Now there you
Yeah,
go. In
it
fact,
is Pinot.
Talansky has caught up with Thibaut Pinot as we came down the descent. He took some few risks going around the corners to come up to the Frenchman. So the race situation now, Simon Geschke still leads with a pretty good pull your shoulders in tightly there to get around that corner. Talansky now is in second position on the road with Thibaut Pinot. But I think more importantly, Phil, as they start the descent, Richie Porte has got the position that he likes just in front of Chris Froome.
So the leaders are now beginning to tip down. They're not quite there yet. 10 minutes has gone by. This is Barguil. They're just behind that very elite group of riders now who are going down this mountain. Pinot, I think, has probably had his nerve racked a little bit by that fall, and I think he's having trouble now cleaning up. Now here goes Nibali on the way down. He can descend and he's going to test them.
He can. I tell you what, talking to many of the bike riders, apart from Peter Sagan, they reckon Vincenzo Nibali is the best descender in the whole of the main field. Now, I really don't know why Richie Porte is trying to keep up with Vincenzo Nibali. They can afford to let him go clear. He's 7 minutes and 49 seconds behind Chris Froome in the overall standings. But you know, Richie Porte has said, well, as long as I can get around these corners nice and safely, I'll just try and keep him in my sights.
Well, we're just hearing that Bauke Mollema has only just gone over the top, so he really did take a packet on the climb there. As we go to the man at the front now, who set the pace from that breakaway since the start of the climb of the Col d'Alos. He's on his way down at high speed, and he's got to get up to the finishing line if he can. He's only 11 kilometres away from that line.
Yes, and he's not too far away from the start of the final climb of the day. Once he starts to get down there, it's 6 kilometres uphill, so he's 5 kilometres. And those 5 kilometres at these speeds are not going to take him very much more than 5 minutes. And the final climb of the day takes about 14 minutes to get up.
We're on the dizzy descent here, the Col d'Alos, as riders take risks. Rigoberto Urán is in our picture now as we're looking at this. A little bit of a comeback. He's also picked off. Thibaut Pinot is not enjoying the drop at all.
Well, after that crash, Phil, Thibaut Pinot has lost a little bit of nerves going around these corners. He's been caught first of all by Andrew Talansky. Now he's been caught by Rigoberto Urán, and he will back off a bit. Look at the way he's backing off going around that corner. It is such a shame to be a brilliant climber, to gain time going uphill and to lose it all going downhill. But, you know, as I say, Phil, this is a guy who's got a great future in French cycling. He finished third overall in the Tour de France last year, and here he's just trying to get a little bit of pride back. But he just cannot stay on the wheel of these guys going past him in what is a very dangerous and a very technical descent.
It is. It's a real curly bends as they come down this mountain. He had a very bad first week. He had crashes galore and he injured a knee. Took a little while to get it back into working order. He's back to fitness, but unfortunately he just can't hammer home on these descents. He's trying to salvage his tour with a stage win. As we go back through the riders here, they're all over the mountain now, by the way, as Nibali still leads down, but Chris Froome is so far controlling the top descender in that group.
Well, just looking at the group, in fact, they're not going flat out down this descent. Although Vincenzo Nibali looks to me as if he's making a big move on the descent, there are a number of riders starting to catch back up. And look, Froome is still staying in contact, followed by Alejandro Valverde.
There's been a crash here. That's Contador.
That's Contador, yeah.
That's Contador, and Sagan is stopped as well because he's a teammate of Contador. Riders are picking their way around that fallen figure of Contador.
Well, all of a sudden, Peter Sagan was there. That was part of the tactic of having him in the breakaway this afternoon. And now the race situation is seeing Alberto Contador, and that's why you have to have teammates up alongside you in a moment like this. So I'm just looking to see, I can see Nibali, I can see Froome, I can see Alejandro Valverde, but where is Nairo Quintana? Quintana is, oh, there he is, just popped on the back. You saw there that Alejandro Valverde looked over his shoulder just to say, is my teammate here up alongside me? Quintana. So Nibali, Froome, Valverde and Quintana in the next group on the road.
Real one-on-one battle as we climb up towards the finish. This is Pinot. He's not having a great descent. He's been passed by a number of riders on the way down now.
Well, it's not a surprise, Phil, because I know, when you've had an accident like that, you just lose a little bit of nerve. You break earlier going into the corners. You don't quite have the same lucidity, the same agility going round corners like this. And this is a pretty scary descent, I have to tell you.
It's horrible. Let's face it, and you see advantage Nibali here. The others are trying to follow a man who's supreme on the descents. Not easy.
So as we now start to come down there, Pinot just looking, he's trying to look around the corner. He's just trying to see if he can spot where the line is, so he can, once the road straightens out, he tries to get into a nice aerodynamic position. The speed's going down here, well in excess of 85 kilometers an hour. And you see the difference in the road surface is also a little bit precarious. There are certain parts of it. Oh dear me! Well, that was the team car there, and he's about to start the final climb of the day, but he came almost unstuck there as he's 5.8 kilometers to go. The grimace on the face now of Simon Geschke. He's got all of the difficult points of today's stage behind him. 2 third category climbs, a second and a first, and now he's lining himself up for the final 5 kilometers. And they're going to take him around about 12 minutes to get to the top. This is Pinot. Around the corner. Again, every time he goes round this corner, he's losing a little bit of time, and he just is not taking a good line going around that corner. Now, Alejandro Valverde putting pressure on the yellow jersey, and Valverde is the champion of Spain, and Froome again takes responsibility and tries to nail him back.
Just look at this. Chris Froome won't let anybody slip him. He's gone after Alejandro Valverde now.
Well, Valverde just trying to put a little bit of pressure onto the shoulders of Froome, but Froome, as the yellow jersey, is taking responsibility, and now into third position, Vincenzo Nibali. And Nairo Quintana, Phil, he's just sitting there. He's having the ride down this descent in the slipstream of everybody else, and what he'll be thinking about is the possibility of a move on this last climb. There's the last little corner. That's around about 6.2 kilometers to go to the finish.
Pinot now lives in hope. If he can climb like he climbed up the Col d'Alos, there might be just a chance to get up amongst it again. It'll have to be special now. Here's Andrew Talansky further up the road. The leader's just 5 kilometers from the top.
Well, this 5 kilometers for the leader, Phil, is not going to take him now more than about 11 minutes. This is not the steepest climb in the Alps, but for one rider, Simon Geschke, it's going to be a long ride for 5 kilometers. Having a quick look, these ride just looking to see where Adam Yates has gone, because
Frank?
now all of a sudden Matthias Frank is sitting on the wheel of Thibaut Pinot. I think they may well have just left Adam Yates behind, and they too now are at the 5 kilometer point to go.
Oh dear me, this is going to be very, very tight, but that's a nice lead, you know, for Simon Geschke. Here he is, 1:10 they're saying now. 1 minute 10 seconds. He's lost a little bit of time. He's lost 10-15 seconds. And Talansky is storming up, and Talansky these last few days of the Tour has really turned his form around. Remember, he's in the breakaway. He's very unlucky when he had a flat tyre and lost that move, and that breakaway stayed clear to the finish. Who knows, he may have won the day then.
Well, Phil, that the Grand Prix of Argovik, 7%. Meanwhile, they're still on the descent.
That's the battle for the stage up front, but the battle for who leads the Tour tonight, these are the 4 men. Vincenzo Nibali in that blue jersey, he's the odd one out. The other 3 are going to be the first 3 on the podium overall tonight.
Well, just watch out, Phil, over the next couple of days for Team Movistar, because when it ever comes down to the final crunch, there are always 2 riders from Movistar there, and that 2-punch attack could be what they're looking for down towards the end, because Alejandro Valverde has now, by today, moved up into 3rd place in the overall standings, and here he's riding as a perfect teammate for the man sitting on the back there, the Colombian climber Nairo Quintana. I'm sure Quintana will make a couple of moves here, Phil, on the final climb of the day, because there's a couple of points where it's around about 15% on the climb up here to Pralu.
Now let's not forget, as we rejoin the leader, Alberto Contador was with that group. He's had a problem with his bike. He is chasing, but we don't know exactly his location behind Froome. Well, Jens, Andrew Talansky, he had a big chance the other day and he had a puncture. That breakaway worked. Do you think he can bridge the gap?
That is the question here. Geschke is a really solid rider, but not the world's best climber. He got more of a punch to him than being a climber. So he's more like a Pierre Fredrigo or Sylvain Chavanel type of rider. Talansky is the better rider, but it's the last week of the Tour, and it's just about who has the most left in his tank. And I believe Andrew is running out of kilometers to catch him.
Yeah, but the thing is, Jens, just seeing the way that Thibaut Pinot, who really struggled on the downhill part of this course, now seems to be getting into his climbing legs, and he is a very good climber, and he seems to have good rhythm.
Yes, there's good rhythm there, but it's 1.7 miles. It's just a little more than 3 kilometers. It's not enough distance left to close that one gap. He needs to close 20 seconds per kilometer, and that's very hard because Geschke is still a solid rider.
Well, while we've been talking, Talansky has knocked off 4 seconds of his deficit. He now sits at 3 kilometers to go. He's got 53 seconds to make it. It will be touch and go, but it does climb all the way to the line. And we're looking at the chasers here. We've got no news on Contador, except he's chasing behind these 4 riders. So Contador chases these 4 men. 3 of these 4 will be the top 3 riders in the Tour de France tonight.
Well, you can see now that Alejandro Valverde, the champion of Spain, is laying it on the line here for the man sitting in 4th position, the Colombian climber Nairo Quintana, 2nd overall in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. Last year, the winner of the Giro d'Italia, and I feel that he's just waiting to pounce. He's waiting for the steepest part of this climb, and he will make a move. He said he will make a move all the way up to Paris, and he's been perfectly set up there, Phil, by his teammate Alejandro Valverde.
Under 3 kilometers to go rather for Matthias Frank down there and Thibaut Pinot, but they're not going to close the gap to this man now. I don't think anybody is, quite honestly. 2 kilometers. And Simon Geschke pursuing him, and he's only just around that corner in front, but we are climbing, and 51 seconds might be a bridge too far.
Just look at the face here of Andrew Talansky, Phil. He knows this is a massive opportunity to win a mountain stage of the Tour de France, while the leader on the road, Simon Geschke, goes inside of 2 kilometers. Andrew Talansky now has got to wipe out 25 seconds per kilometre, and just looking at the pedalling style, looking at the body language here of Simon Geschke, I don't think that he's going to crack. On the right hand side, Le Tombeur du Cannibal means the man who dethroned the cannibal. The cannibal was Eddie Merckx, and the man who dethroned him on this climb over, what was it, 40 years ago, was Bernard Thévenet.
1975 it was indeed, 40 years ago. 2 kilometers to the summit. It climbs all the way to the line. This man is inside 2 kilometers to the summit. The gap is 47 seconds. The pursuit by Talansky. 3rd man on the road is Rigoberto Urán. Geschke can shortly see that kilometer flag and might be able to dream of his greatest moment. Talansky passes the man who proved unbeatable until this day 40 years ago when he lost his yellow jersey to Bernard Thévenet. 29 years of age. His best classic result is 6th in the Amstel Gold Race last year. Talansky tries to hunt him down, but at least the carrot of Geschke is keeping Talansky away from anybody catching him. And 2nd is not a bad place on a day like today. 500 meters to go. The crowd can cheer him home, but it's a relentless climb now. Even when he crosses the line, there's no freewheel. You're going to have to catch him. A wonderful result. Now somebody catch him, because this is the top of the climb. Simon Geschke wins for Germany. Now Andrew Talansky, such bad luck in the a few days ago when he punctured in a winning breakaway, and now it's all gone right for him. He's climbing up to 2nd on the day.
Yeah, but it's always a good sign, Phil, when you can ride like this in the last week of a Grand Tour. He might not have won the stage today, but his psychological approach to the next few days in the Tour de France will be right on the ascent.
And Chris Froome has just gone under 3 kilometers to go, so Andrew Talansky is making gains. This is Rigoberto Urán here, who's coming up now. He's shown a nice return to form for the Ethics team. He was expected to be their man of the mountains. That has not been the case, but today he's shown us he's not a bad climber.
He's a brilliant climber when you know he finished 2nd twice in the Giro d'Italia.
Another man to catch as he comes over the line. Whoa, he's going to fall off. No, they got him.
Well, they're just trying to get time between themselves and Alberto Contador, and we will resume the attacks tomorrow when we go on to the next day in the Alps.
Herrada is still trying to control the pace here as we go back to 3 kilometres and find Contador. He's lost a couple of minutes at this point on the climb, and frankly that's very sad. Bad luck, that's all it was. And this is Kruijswijk coming up now, Stefan, and he's in his first tour, and he's showing the Dutch that one day he could be a big man to reckon with. They need a new Dutchman at the top in the Tour de France.
Well, you see the guys in the white jerseys there now. This is Alejandro. Oh, there's the move.
And there it comes, as it was bound. A few seconds could be crucial later on. And he's gone. Can Chris Froome bury himself and pick him back in? Because it looks like he can. Look at the speed of Froome across the gap as he he looks a bit further from the helicopter. He needs a bit more than that to gain any time. You know, Chris Froome against this man that throughout the Pyrenees till the rest day gained only 1 second, and they're locked in again.
Well, Nairo Quintana said it was a lot easier in 2013, Phil, to attack Chris Froome because nobody really knew who I was. But nowadays there's a big number on my back that says my name is Nairo. So when he does attack, they take it much more seriously. There you can see Froome has done the job. He's on his own now. And
here goes Nibali. No, it doesn't. Well, there's still a chance. They want time. They've got to get daylight to get time. Otherwise, it's status quo. They've hacked through most of the riders in that breakaway.
Well, Tanel Kanget is the rider on the front just doing the pacemaking for Vincenzo Nibali, and they've actually let a little bit of a gap there go, and that's because I think Chris Froome wants to keep an eye on Alejandro Valverde. He knows the explosive punch that Alejandro Valverde has at the top of a mountaintop finish like this. So he wants to keep an eye on him in front and just see whether or not there'll be some move coming from Quintana behind. But you know, Phil, they've announced, all of these guys have said, we're going to go for this. We're going to go for the juggler over the next 3 days of racing.
But what they're showing us again is there is nothing between these riders at this stage of the Tour de France. They're all riding at their maximum. And we'll see who recovers briefly to try and steal the higher position on the day. It's a matter of pride now. There's no time to be gained here. We're going into the second day in the Alps. This is the man who lost, sadly, time today, Alberto Contador. And it wasn't through any fault of his own.
Well, bear in mind, Phil, as we look a little bit further down there, this is the rider from AG2R who's in the break. I think that's Jan Bakelands. So more importantly, we could see with the group of riders there, Phil, with all the heads of state, we could see Vincenzo Nibali moving into the top 5 in the overall standings today, because I'm having a hard time getting any information to the presence of Geraint Thomas, who started the day in 6th. There's Daniel Tekla-Heimenot, so a good move for Eritrea, and Rafael Maika coming across the line there for Tinkoff.
Yes, remember, they're engaged in a major team battle now with Team Movistar, who sent their rider back here, and he seems to have been dropped by this group now. We've only got the 5 heads of state there, as it were. This is Sanchez, but he's lost his leader today. He's come up behind Contador. Contador just racing to save as many seconds as he can. 100% committed. Time is of the essence.
Well, again,
Nibali was last year's winner of the Tour de France, and he's climbed right from the depths
dropping
back
off the back here.
Oh,
no, he's getting ready for an attack.
Sure?
Watch out for this.
Are you sure he was dropping off to just go off the front? Look at that attack as Quintana goes again, and Chris Froome is after him. Just blew the rest of the contenders away, that's for sure. Froome trying to get back onto the wheel, and well, there's a turn up as we go through now. I think it's 2 kilometres out there, might be 1, 2 I think. Oh, 500 metres, I missed the one. Is he going to find him lacking now? He's just made the move. And again, Chris Froome is trying to finish off what the others start.
A tricky little move there by Nairo Quintana. He backed off a fraction. He gave himself 2 or 3 bike lengths to get the catapult effect. You hardly get much of a slipstream effect at speeds like this on the slopes of a climb, but just a little bit psychologically for Quintana. He opened up the gap. Chris Froome struggled to come back up to him and then decided, well, I'll take over control here and try and finish it all off. But these 2 men, Phil, as in 2013, are proving to be the strongest 2 men at the Tour.
You're looking at the 1st and 2nd in 2012. You're now looking at the 1st and 2nd, I guess, in Paris in 2013. I think I said 12, because that's how they finished in 13, and now they're the best 2 again. And you know, he's still looking, he's going the long way around. Valverde losing time, doesn't want any of it, because he's now climbed up to 3rd overall in the Tour de France today. Well, take your hat off to Quintana. He might even gain a 2nd. It took him 5 days through the Pyrenees to do that. Same time on the line.
But I think, Phil, just a psychological battle between these 2 guys. They're throwing everything they can at each other. Well, Alejandro Valverde, the little sign there says, come on, please help me out.
Catch me, yeah. And at the end of the day, Nibali has lost a few seconds, but Contador is the man who is losing time, of course, at the moment, and we'll have to see.
The standings this morning, Warren Barguil started the day in 10th place, and one man missing is also Bauke Mollema. Here is Alberto Contador, and it's going to be very, very close now between him and Geraint Thomas, but he was slowed down by a nasty accident. Well, this is the man who will write his name down on the first Alpine stage of the 2015 Tour de France, Simon Geschke of Team Giant Alpecin.
Andrew Talansky, Rigoberto Urán, Pino, Frank Kreiswijk, all these men up the front, Nicholas Roach in 7th. All of those riders were in the race-long, well, not quite the race-long breakaway, but the breakaway that survived today in the first 10 overall. There will be a closing and a slight change. Adam Yates got across the line there in 10th place, 3:21 down. He's warming to the Tour de France now. It's his first time in the event. This rider, though, gave Germany, Paul, their 5th victory, so the Germans are having a great tour this time.
No, a brilliant tour. 3-stage victories going to Andre Greipel, but this man, he really made the move. I mean, that was a brave move to go away on the slopes of the Col d'Alos. It was a long way to go, and he took plenty of risks going downhill.
Here's the new overall standings. Froome, Quintana stay together. Valverde is now the new 3rd place after the retirement of TJ Van Garderen. Geraint Thomas comes up into 4th place. Contador stays in 5th place overall.